Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of Tuesday, October 21st. We're going to go ahead and start. And we're going to start with roll call, please.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yep.
Sorry, one second. Supervisor Arroyo?
Here.
Supervisor Wilson?
Present.
Chair Bushnell?
Good morning again.
Supervisor Madrone is absent.
Okay, we're going to salute our flag, please. CAO Hayes, are there any modifications this morning?
Good morning, Chair Bushnell. There's one modification. Item H3 will be pulled from the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So we are going to go right into our consent calendar. Any member of the board wish to have comments on the consent calendar? I'm gonna.
Yeah, there's recognitions that we probably should mention because they've earned them. This comes from the Henderson Center Kiwanis Women in Business. And they've got, this year, they're recognizing Carol Crosley as Businesswoman of the Year, Dr. Kathy Thornhill as Woman of Distinction, and Jan Carr as Nonprofit Woman of the Year. So I'd like to recognize those.
Okay. And then for the Fortuna Kiwanis, this will be happening tomorrow evening. Genevieve Brown is Woman of Distinction, and Sandra Close is Businesswoman of the Year. So congratulations to them both. And then also today, we will be, let me get to it. We will be closing and adjourning in memory of Susan Susie Smith, who was a flight nurse that was killed in a helicopter accident on about 3 weeks ago. And although I didn't know her personally, she flew into Humboldt County often, and I believe Supervisor Bohn had an opportunity to meet her. If you read about her accomplishments that she had in her life, she was a huge humanitarian and did a lot of work overseas with her nursing credential, and her flight crew definitely, and the people that work with her, just really just honoring her, and she sounds like an exceptional lady.
Yeah, she was. I mean, I think the sheriff's here. I know a lot of his staff and everything knew her real well. Dan Bratton, who runs the Reach outfit for this area, Jason Chan said she was an exceptional flight nurse. But the problem, the issue is, she wasn't just an exceptional flight nurse. She was an exceptional person. And she brought calm to the bird when they were on it, but she brought calm to outlying areas. As Supervisor Bushnell said, she did a lot of stuff away from her job that benefited the county. So it was a tragic thing. There were 2 other people injured in that. It was pretty serious, obviously, but anyway, you got to understand when those flights go out that there's always that possibility, and she did it with a certain amount of calm, and so she gave her life doing what she loved, but she did it very well.
Yes, and so we're sending our love to the Reach family and to her family, her husband and children, and just a lot of reflection about what people do for others, and sometimes they give their life in service, and she definitely did. So I'm going to have CAO Hayes is going to make a clarification.
Yeah, my apologies. It's item H2 that was pulled. There was some shifting in the agenda. There is no H3, so if anybody was wondering about that, H2 will be pulled from the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Any other comment, Supervisor Bohn?
Number two, I think, was brought by Supervisor Arroyo, maybe. Since I've known some of the parties for well over 20 years that are involved in that station, and the amount of work that has gone into cleaning that station up and making it asset to Myrtle. I'd like to see this on the consent because I don't see where there's any issues. And I didn't hear from anybody, but we have some owners in there that have a history of doing a very good job in Humboldt County, so I appreciate it.
Okay, if there's no other comments from the board, we'll go out to public comment and we'll start on the Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Caller 7718, I will unmute you and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, yes, that was one of my points. There wasn't any H3 there. Appreciate you catching that before I had to make mention. I did notice the item number 2, the public convenience related to issuance of the Type 21 alcohol beverage license brought forward by Supervisor Arroyo. The main thing is if you do have a good reputation, I'll trust Rex to say that they did on this, of not serving minors, of not allowing that to happen. And it's always a major concern. We do have some other establishments around the county that are busted for that so often, and if they're being responsible, I don't have any problem with that moving forward. And the other thing I did want to make mention, it appears that you're finally coming to the fruition of the downsizing the Fish and Game Commission that you have there down, I think, from 15 to 10. That's a great move. So those are my main comments I think I have for today as far as you're concerned. Thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Chair, that's all on Zoom.
Okay, any public comment on the room? Good morning, Joanne. This is on consent calendar. If you wish to speak, you can line up okay, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name's Joanne McGarry, and in your adjournment for Susie Smith, I didn't know the woman. However, one of the things that stands out, and it's a really important issue, is that she was an organ donor. And this is something that is a beautiful, beautiful contribution people make. And so in addition to all the other things in her lifetime that she was able to do to help people in her death, she also did that. So I just wanted to say that about her.
Thank you. I didn't know that, and I appreciate you saying that. Any other public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board, and we're going to welcome Supervisor Madrone. And if you have any comments on the consent calendar? No? Okay. So I'll be looking for a motion.
I'll move consent.
I'll second. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. We will go right into public comment on non-agenda items. And so if you're listening on the Zoom, we always start with Zoom. Make sure you're not listening to your phone or your computer, but listen for the prompt. And Kaylee, is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
There is, Chair. 7718, I will unmute you and you will have 3 minutes.
Hello, Ken Sawatsky. I have a question for someone who works for CWS. He's an attorney. His name is Doug Tabor, and his job is to represent people during CWS trials. My question for Doug is it common legal practice to provide a client file upon request after legal representation ceases? My understanding it is, and I hopefully Mr. Tabor will comply with that request. Many things that a person who's in these kind of trials has is 30-day time frames, and if they can't get the paperwork they need, they cannot follow through with appeals or have their rights dealt with in many ways. So it's been over 3 months since that's been requested of Mr. Tabor, a county employee there with CWS attorney. Maybe sometime you respond or else they'll follow through and do things required of them. The second topic I have here was last meeting, there was a comment, if I recall that, made by Mike Wilson, Supervisor Wilson, under the thing where you have to move forward to do a letter of opposition to offshore mining and oil. And it was alleged that there was going to be a sale or something put forward on October 15th. That didn't transpire, so I don't know where Supervisor and Coastal Commissioner Wilson got that information. I tried to track it way up the ladder to see what happened, and there may have been some comment by somebody on staff or the president sometime about looking at it. That sale didn't happen, nor is there any wind of it, but in the future there may be. It seemed to have raised some interest when that was brought forward. So if we do end up with an offshore sale for mining and oil exploration, it happens to be an exact footprint of the offshore wind. It's kind of interesting. It's okay for us to go ahead, and I don't support either of those projects offshore. But if you can have one, you can have the other. You're punching holes in the thing, pretty large structures. So I guess if that does happen, I guess the first derrick will probably oil derrick would be named after Mike Wilson as far as the derelict derrick there. Anyway, sometimes it's best not to bring things to light, and you may get attention to topics that kind of were not happening or laying there, but now appears to be on somebody's plate. So it's an opportunity to speak on non-agenda items today.
Thank you. That's all on Zoom, Chair.
Okay, now we go to public comment on non-agenda items in the room. Please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you. I won't read the part about myself, as you can read that, and I don't like talking about myself, but anyways, I'll move on. I'm here today to express serious concerns shared by me and many of my neighbors in Jacoby Creek area, near Upper Jacoby Creek Garden and Glory Lane. Recently, several of us noticed significant grading and tree removal activity on the watershed directly above the creek at the property located at 6108 Jacoby Creek Road. Large trees have been dropped and heavy equipment was used to build roads without any visible permits or timber harvest plan on record. Ironically, the same property owner previously published an op-ed in the Eco News describing his arrest for blocking illegal timber harvest by the city of Arcata, claiming that trees are sacred to his beliefs, but yet less than a year later, the individual is cutting down large trees on his own land without a permit, including one so large that it shook the ground. Beyond that, he's graded approximately a quarter mile of roadways above Jacoby Creek without an engineer, permits, or regard for the sensitive spawning habitat below. Although code enforcement issued a stop work order in August of 2025, the property owner continued heavy equipment work, and I got photos of that, and even publicly stated plans to build dams, storage ponds, and an eco village in Jacoby Creek Forest, an area not suited for that level of development. In the packet, you'll see his plans, which are publicly published about this. Neighbors have endured years of safety and nuisance concerns, including aggressive, unrestrained dogs that were officially deemed potentially dangerous by animal control, free-roaming livestock that damaged yards, and even a bonfire during a county-wide burn suspension. Despite repeated warnings, this individual shows a consistent pattern of disregard for county regulations and community safety. Equally concerning, his previous attempts to move people onto the land led to trespassing, theft, my property was broken into, and threats of violence toward neighbors, including me. This is not just a code violation, it's a public safety issue and watershed protection. For almost 8 years, this person has demonstrated a pattern of lawlessness, intimidation of neighbors, and environmental harm. Our community has lost patience and confidence that voluntary compliance will occur. We are respectfully requesting that the property owner be required to restore the graded areas and cease all unpermitted activity, that the county impose civil administrative penalties for continued violations of the stop work order, which continued even yesterday. Should violations persist, that criminal charges be considered. It's an essential watershed, Jacoby Creek, with a source of drinking water and habitat for salmon. It deserves protection, not exploitation. We cannot allow another Yeehaw number 2 situation to develop while enforcement lags behind. We urge the Board of Supervisors to act swiftly and decisively to protect our community, our creek, and the county's credibility in enforcing its own laws. Since this time, my house has been broken into. I provided
Thank you, ma'am.
copies of
Thank you.
them cutting the chain.
Thank you. Good morning again.
Good morning, Joanne McGarry here. The 3 things I want to talk about. One is the bike cage here at the courthouse. I know that the Board of Supervisors doesn't have control over the building necessarily, but I know winter is coming and maybe fewer people will be motivated to ride a bike here, but I do hope come spring, we maybe have more adequate and safe bicycle parking and parking for things other than cars, so that those of us who want to take, for example, the Humboldt Bay Trail, we can do so and come here to these meetings to be enlightened and enlighten you, and then, safely park our bicycle. And it would be wonderful for those with e-bikes to have a charging station. So I just put that out there, knowing that things take time, but it really would be an incentive to get people out of their cars. And so once that regional climate action plan is passed, we're doing something to get people to do something different than drive a car. The second thing is I rode my e-bike out to the Foster Solar field, I guess, that's on county property, county territory, not in the city of Arcata. I love the fact that we're going with renewables and agricultural land. Apparently, there's an apiary component to these solar panels, but when we do these large-scale projects on agricultural land, preserving the agricultural component and having a more agro-solar combination with livestock and or crops would be wonderful. Bees, I guess, is one thing, but sheep and crops would be another thing. So those are two things that I'd like to bring up in the 1 minute I have left. I just want to remind us, because everything that happens anywhere in the world affects us. And what has happened in the past 2 years with the horror show in Gaza has affected us in so many ways, monetarily with tax dollars, emotionally, personally with this, the horrors of what's happening to humanity over there, and to the climate. And I just want to say that we passed a ceasefire resolution. There was supposed a ceasefire a couple of weeks ago. It's not being upheld by the state of Israel, and we should start considering how to voice our concern about what is really going on in that part of the world. And it matters to all of us. It affects all of us. So I just want to say that out loud.
Thank you. So those of you that came in, this is public comment on non-agenda items. If you would like to make a public comment on non-agenda items, please come forward. Good morning, Charles.
My name is Charles Wilson. We've been protesting at the courthouse corner for about 5 years now. We've never been in the newspaper. The Times Standard had a one-time protest against Trump in their headlines a couple of days ago. Media doesn't like Trump, and their purpose is to control public opinion, not necessarily report it. At the beginning of the government COVID nonsense times, we would get 15 to 20 honks. Lots of fingers and screaming, but after the death data started leaking out, we were getting 600 to 700 honks in 2 hours. Motorists probably can't read our signs, but they're driving by because they're driving by so fast. But they like to see a human waving at them. We'd like to make them happy. Motorists don't honk at a billboard. Here's a sign. This is my current sign. I say, no number 50. Government is our servant, not our master. We don't live in China. We think for ourselves. The politicians in the states of California and Texas are our nation's leaders. They both think alike, and they both show the proper concern and way to control us people. California, however, is making a big mistake with this special election that's costing us $290 million. That's a lot of money. That's taxpayer money, not government money. That's almost $1/3 of $1 billion. It doesn't matter that California is $20 billion has a deficit of $20 billion. We have an innovative group of high-paid legislators, however, and they know how to manipulate us in the direction of their demand. They have lots and lots of tax money, but it shouldn't be wasted like Democrat Governor Newsom is doing. My suggestion is that instead of wasting so much of our tax money on this stupid election, they should have passed a law giving Texas $290 million so that they can fight their state's politicians' trick to rig their election. California
Thank you, Charles. That's your time.
Okay, is it 3 minutes?
Yep, that was 3 minutes.
Okay, anyway.
Thank you. No, you can't finish.
Unaffiliated party is
Charles, you can't
biggest
finish. Thank you. Any other public commenter on non-agenda items? Seeing none, I will close public comment. And we're going to go to our first public hearing of the day, and this comes to us from Planning and Building.
Good morning, Chair Bushnell, members of the Board of Supervisors, John Ford, Rodney Yandell, and Augustus Grishal, to present this modification to the reasonable accommodation provisions of our zoning ordinance.
Okay, I think I need to open the public hearing.
You do.
Okay, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to have you continue.
Thank you. And before Mr. Grishal begins this, and this isn't very complicated, it's really to comply with state law. I wanted to say that we've been diligently working on getting our housing ordinances updated, and Mr. Grishal's, that's his primary responsibility. So you'll see him rolling through here with housing ordinances on a pretty regular cadence. He's doing a fantastic job, and he and Rodney, Mr. Yandell, are just doing super. So with that.
All right, so this is the updates to the reasonable accommodation ordinance, as John Ford said, specifically about residential accessibility. So reasonable accommodations for residential accessibility need to be permitted ministerial per state law, and presently our code says they need to be special permits. So we're fixing that, and they are still appealable to you guys at the board. A reasonable accommodation is changes, exceptions, or adjustments to rules, policies, or practices for individuals with disabilities such that they have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the whole of a dwelling. And the intent here is to eliminate barriers that prevent individuals with disabilities from fully participating in housing opportunities. For example, if someone needs to have a ramp so that they can access their home, a reasonable accommodation may be required to reduce the setbacks if it can't be built otherwise outside of them. And these are changes in accordance with Housing Element Implementation Measure number 67, which promised to amend section 312-42 ex sequentes, which is the requests for modifications or exceptions for residential accessibility code section, such that they're consistent with the Americans with Disabilities Act and fair housing standards at both the state and federal level. We've also included other anti-discrimination laws, such as California Government Code Section 11135 and the Rehabilitation Act Section 504, which is federal. And planning staff recommends that you all adopt this resolution, which does which finds that the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance are exempt from environmental review and makes all required findings, and that you adopt the amendments to the zoning regulations as described in the staff report. That ends my presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions y'all may have. That's a very brief summary of everything.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? No? Seeing none? Excuse me. We're going to go out to public comment, and we'll start on the Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Caller 7718, I will unmute you, and you will have 3 minutes.
Keselowski, I've noticed that the CEQA basically is being eliminated throughout all of California because of the desire to have housing, and they're willing to throw away the environmental guidelines that protect that. I've never seen this before. It's the first time. I find it interesting that CEQA is exempt from review under the common sense exemption. So I guess that one person's common sense isn't another. I don't see a problem. You have to comply with state laws, but I did want to point out the fact that the elimination of CEQA in itself is not a common sense thing. Thank you, Mark. Can you speak on this?
Thank you. That's all on Zoom.
Okay, is there any public comment in the room on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution, to adopt the ordinance, and to direct the clerk of the board to publish the posted document summary and all parts of the recommended staff actions.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
It disappeared again.
Kaylee, can you do a roll call, please?
Supervisor Bohn? Supervisor Arroyo?
Yes.
Chair Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. We actually are going to do, you guys are going to have to move and come back. Sorry. So we'll go from there. We're going to go to the next public hearing, which comes to us from Public Works. Let me get back to it. Okay. So we're gonna, this is the one you pulled?
H2 was pulled.
I'm sorry,
Supervisor.
John. I moved you guys for nothing. Okay, so the next one was pulled. So we're gonna go back to planning and building for a departmental report. And this is adoption of a vehicle miles traveled policy by resolution for CEQA threshold and screening criteria. And we're gonna go back to Director Ford. My apologies.
That is correct. Thank you, Chair, members of the Board of Supervisors, John Ford and Rodney Yandel, to present the VMT guidelines. And I'm going to pull the item up so we have a presentation. And what this is intended to do was, with the change in CEQA, to change the review criteria for environmental impacts related to transportation from level of service to VMT. This provides guidelines for determining whether or not it's subject to additional environmental review or whether it can be exempted. And so I'm going to pull the presentation up here very quickly, or do you already have it up?
It's going to take me a second to get set up. Sorry about that.
That's fine. Take your time.
Got it, Rodney.
We're clipping along pretty quick here. Do you want us to take a 5-minute break?
Please.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll come back.
Where's the presentation?
Okay, go ahead and start.
All right. Good morning, Board of Supervisors and the public. My name is Megan Acevedo, and I'm here to present the Vehicle Miles Traveled Threshold Policy. SB 743 was signed into law in 2013, which changed how local governments assess transportation impacts under CEQA. by switching the primary metric from level of service to vehicle miles traveled. Starting in July of 2020, local governments were required to assess projects' transportation impacts using the VMT metric, either by adopting thresholds of significance or by reviewing project impacts on a case-by-case basis. The department has been assessing projects' transportation impacts with the VMT metric on a case-by-case basis, and we are proposing to set guidelines through the VMT threshold policy. Setting VMT thresholds will provide for better consistency in assessing projects' transportation impacts. To comply with CEQA and enhance the use of vehicle miles, the VMT metric for project review, we have developed the draft VMT threshold policy that is being presented today. Development of the policy was done using the Office of Planning and Research's technical advisory on evaluating transportation impacts in CEQA by incorporating recommendations from Fair and Peers traffic consultants and information from the VMT study report, and through consultation with other local jurisdictions. The VMT policy establishes a baseline for existing VMT and sets quantitative thresholds to determine a project's level of impact under CEQA. It outlines appropriate screening criteria for projects considered to have a less than significant impact without a detailed VMT analysis, and sets guidelines for a detailed analysis when a project cannot be screened out. The overall goal of the policy is to encourage development in appropriate areas that would result in lower VMT. Analyzing a project under CEQA determines if a project would have a less than significant impact, would have a less than significant impact with mitigation, or would have an impact that is significant and unavoidable. Adopting specific screening criteria in the VMT policy would allow for efficiency when assessing transportation impacts by identifying early on if a project is considered to have a less than significant impact, or if further detailed analysis is needed to determine the project's level of impact. Here's a list of the recommended screening criteria, which have been developed using the recommendations of the OPR Technical Advisory. The following criteria would identify projects considered to have a less than significant transportation impact without preparing a detailed VMT analysis. Projects that would be screened out include small projects that generate less than 110 trips per day, residential and employment projects located within low VMT mapped areas, mixed-use projects located within all applicable low VMT mapped areas, projects within a half mile of a major transit stop identified by HCOG's Regional Transportation Plan, 100% affordable housing projects located within urban areas, local serving retail projects that are under 50,000 square feet, and redevelopment projects that would not increase VMT from existing uses. The options for low VMT screening areas will be discussed further in the presentation, and it should be noted that there are currently no major transit stops in unincorporated Humboldt County, but there are plans to increase the list of major transit stops identified in the Regional Transportation Plan, such as one being proposed on Central Avenue with the approved McKinleyville Town Center. To assess projects against the VMT metric, specific methodology needs to be identified first. The following VMT metrics are established in the proposed policy and were developed using the recommended VMT per capita methodology in the OPR Technical Advisory. The two established metrics are VMT per resident and VMT per employee. The VMT per resident data would be used to assess projects, residential projects, and the VMT per employee data would be used to assess employment projects or projects that have employees, including retail, commercial, and industrial projects. The VMT policy also sets thresholds of significance for new development projects in line with the recommendations in the OPR Technical Advisory. As there are two baselines established for existing VMT, there are two thresholds to follow. The thresholds being recommended are 15% below the baseline for residential projects and 15% below the baseline for employment projects. Existing baseline VMT for the county was established in the VMT study report from Fair and Peers, which utilized 2022 streetlight data to estimate the average trip length per resident and per employee. The study found that for unincorporated Humboldt County, the average VMT per resident was 22.1 miles per day, and the average VMT per employee was 14.7 miles per day. The study also identified county-wide VMT averages, which includes data for the incorporated cities. These averages were found to be 20.1 miles per day for residents and 13.2 miles per day for employees. According to the technical advisory, the county has the option to use the unincorporated county averages, option 1 identified in the staff report, or the county-wide averages, option 2 identified in the staff report, to set the baseline VMT and thresholds from. On May 1st, 2025, the Planning Commission was split on whether to use the unincorporated county data or the county-wide data to establish the baseline VMT and thresholds from. Option 1 would establish a higher threshold with lower intensity, and option 2 would establish a lower threshold with higher intensity. This will also affect the established low VMT screening areas, and staff's recommendation is to utilize the unincorporated county data, option 1, because this is more reflective of the county's jurisdictional area. Here's a map of the low VMT areas for residential projects using the unincorporated county data for average VMT per resident. This map identifies U.S. Census block groups that were found to have an existing VMT that is already 15% or more below the average for the unincorporated county. However, staff recommended removing the outlying block groups from the low VMT mapped areas to encourage development in infill areas. Here is a map of the residential low VMT screening areas that are being recommended for adoption. This map removes the outlying rural block groups from the available map screening criteria, which is in line with the intent of encouraging development in infill areas. Going with the countywide average, including the city's data, would further reduce the available screening areas from this map. This slide shows the difference in screening areas for residential projects using the unincorporated county average, option 1 shown in the map on the left, compared to using the county-wide average, option 2 shown in the map on the right. You can see that there are several block groups in McKinleyville and around Fortuna that would not be included on the county-wide low VMT screening map for residential projects. Here is a map of the low VMT areas for employment projects using the unincorporated county data for average VMT per employee. This map identifies U.S. Census block groups that were found to have an existing VMT that is already 15% or more below the average for the unincorporated county. However, staff recommended removing the outlying block groups from the low VMT mapped areas to better encourage VMT reduction. Here is a map of the employment low VMT screening areas that are being recommended for adoption. This map removes the outlying block groups from the available map screening criteria for future employment projects. Going with the countywide average, including the cities, would further reduce the available screening areas from this map. This slide shows the difference in screening areas for employment projects using the unincorporated county average, option 1 shown in the map to the left, compared to using the countywide average, option 2 shown in the map to the right. You can see that there are several block groups that would not be included on the countywide low VMT screening map for employment projects. The VMT policy would provide appropriate screening criteria for projects that would automatically be considered to have a less than significant transportation impact and determine that no further VMT analysis is required. Projects that cannot be screened out would require further analysis to determine their level of impact. And projects found to be above the threshold through a detailed analysis would need to apply mitigation strategies to the extent feasible. Mitigation strategies applied may reduce project impacts to a level that would be considered less than significant with mitigation, or would be determined to have a significant and unavoidable impact even with mitigation. Here's a flowchart from the draft policy guidelines, which shows the step-by-step process for VMT impact assessment under CEQA. Projects that conduct a VMT analysis that are found to be above the established threshold and apply mitigation strategies can potentially reduce their impacts to a level of less than significant. Or if they are still found to be above the threshold with mitigation strategies applied, they would be found to have a significant and unavoidable impact with mitigation. Mitigation strategies can be quantified using the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association's, or CAPCOA, calculation methodologies for transportation demand management strategies in the current handbook for analyzing greenhouse gas emission reductions, assessing climate vulnerabilities, and advancing health and equity, further described as the handbook. Methodology and guidance provided in the handbook from the chapter on transportation shall be used to determine the VMT reductions achieved through mitigation strategies that are applied in a detailed VMT analysis. Here's a table showing the potential VMT reductions that could be achieved by mitigation strategies as identified in the CAPCOA handbook for calculating reductions. These strategies can be combined in a project to achieve a less than significant impact with mitigation. We received public comments on the policy, and after review and consideration of these comments, along with requests from the Planning Commission, the following changes were made to the guidelines document. We added language that a reassessment will be done in 2030 to determine if there is a need to update the baseline VMT for the county. We added language to specify that employment projects would include projects that have employees, including industrial and commercial projects. We added language to include utilizing the trip generation guide from the Institute of Traffic Engineers in a detailed project VMT analysis. We removed the rural block groups from the low VMT screening maps. We updated major transit station to be major transit stop in line with the regional transportation plan. And we referenced the CAPCOA handbook for calculating VMT reductions from mitigation. And lastly, we removed the use of cleaner fuel vehicles from the mitigation strategies. As well, the policy guidelines will be updated to include the low VMT screening areas that are being decided on by the board. Staff's recommendation is that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution finding that the proposed policy for VMT thresholds is not a project pursuant to CEQA guidelines, sections 15060C3 and 15378B5, and adopt the proposed VMT threshold policy guidelines establishing thresholds of significance and screening criteria for the purpose of analyzing VMT transportation impacts under CEQA, utilizing either the unincorporated county data or county-wide data to establish the baseline and CEQA thresholds. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks so much. So I'll bring it back to the board for comments. Clarification.
Just a quick question here.
Supervisor Wilson?
Thanks. In terms of the choices before us, right, and in moving this forward, Am I to understand that we're choosing between like county average or jurisdictional averages? Is that part of this? I mean, there was these.
Yes,
A little
absolutely.
bit. There's. I'm just clarify, please. You know.
Sure. So the baseline data is really important because it does two things. One, it establishes the VMT for a given area, and just as a baseline. And then when you subtract 15% from that, then those areas automatically screen out from having to do additional VMT analysis if they're already 15% below the baseline.
Okay.
When you use a lower baseline, obviously, the 15% goes lower. And so you see areas like McKinleyville that then would not screen out. And so part of the policy decision with this is, do you want to have areas in the county that would screen out and as priority areas to allow development, or do you want to remove those and have a higher, basically, threshold that then would require more projects to do that analysis? And in doing the analysis, they may still have a less than significant impact, but they may not, and then they may have to do mitigation.
Okay. When we get to the part about making a motion on this, I may need, or some of us, at least if, I don't know who's going to make a motion here, but we're going to probably need a little help in framing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm sorry, it is a little bit complicated because it's like baseline VMT, you know, that just doesn't make sense for most people. But what it really is talking about is that there are areas where, because of the nature of the location, the trips there are not real high.
Right.
In fact, one of the things that we found absolutely counterintuitive was the fact that there were those huge blobs that are way out in the area. And talking to the traffic engineers about why, it's because those folks don't travel every day.
Yep.
They stay on their land. And so there's not really a commute trip. So for residential purposes, we really don't want to encourage residences there. And that's why we're proposing taking them out. But they would still fall under the exemption of a small project because not many of them would have projects that exceed that threshold. So we're not removing their ability to do anything without a BMT analysis. We're just not encouraging residential development there.
Okay, that's helpful. See where it goes from here.
Supervisor Arroyo?
I mean, I understand that methodology to a point, but can we go back to the countywide versus unincorporated decision? And I know this was like a sticking point for the Planning Commission as well, but if I'm not mistaken, or maybe they're hangups or something else. But I am, when we think about projects, it is hard to, I mean, people don't stay within, either living or working within the unincorporated part of the county solely. We are sort of married to our incorporated partners in the community when it comes to, where people live and work. I guess I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around why we would, I understand that we only have jurisdiction over the unincorporated portion of the county, but why would we use that higher threshold?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. The struggle is that the cities, as you would expect, have far lower VMT because a lot of people, residences travel to and from work within the city, or the businesses don't generate a lot of VMT because they attract from the local area, whereas the county's a little bit more broad. So when you add the cities into the county-wide average, it lowers the county-wide average. The unincorporated number really represents how people in the county travel. whereas the other is mixed with how the city travels. And so in that context, you would expect the county to have a little bit higher VMT because people in the county travel further, things are more spread out, whereas things in the city are far closer together. But you're right, there are people who travel from Arcata to Eureka, and so that's all in that data.
Supervisor Bohn?
So, and I really don't understand this. The baseline, is that the average you figure, or, and so you're talking about taking 3 miles of 15%, 3 miles off the baseline if the baseline's 20.1 or depending, you know, or 20, whatever.
The 15% reduction?
Yeah, so we're looking at, you're saying most everybody only travels in their vehicle 7,300 miles annually then?
No, we're not saying that. We're saying for the trips that are included, which are typically commute trips.
Okay.
That's what the average is.
Okay. Yeah,
And the 15% is not an arbitrary number. That comes from the state guidelines in terms of what it should be. Some jurisdictions go higher, some go lower.
So it is arbitrary. If it's not arbitrary, then it's set. But if some go higher, some go lower, it sounds like they're not going with the set rate. So that would make it arbitrary.
Well, what we are trying to do is go with the established recommendation from the state, which places us in a good position to be able to defend the policy. If you want to go lower, you've got to really figure out why it should be lower than 15%. If you want to go higher, you've got to have criteria for going higher, and the recommendation that came from us was to stay at 15%.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I back you up to the comment that you made about not encouraging building in, I think, I'm assuming it's the very rural areas?
Right. And what I'm talking about there are large housing developments.
Okay.
Okay?
Not single units?
The single units would screen out as a small project.
Okay.
Single-family residential wouldn't be subject to this. It's exempt.
Okay. What about housing project in, say, southern Humboldt, which is very far removed from services?
So a housing project that is a single-family housing project that's 11 or less units would realistically screen out under the small project exemption.
Okay.
A multifamily project that was 12 to 13 units, multifamily 12 to 13 units would screen out under the small project criteria.
Larger than 13?
They would need to do a VMT analysis if they're subject to CEQA, yes.
And so that could affect larger building units down in that area?
It could. If they were doing an affordable project, they wouldn't be subject to this.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay. Supervisor Bohn?
They also wouldn't be subjected to it, if I read it right, if they're within a half mile of a transit stop. And I see we're changing the name of major transportation stop. What makes a major transportation stop? Just a cover?
I think
or an example?
That HCOG differed a little bit from where the state went with the major transportation stop, or station, I believe it was, and adopted the major transportation stop for Humboldt County.
What would that be? Because it's hard for 130,000 people to have anything major up here spread out over 4,400 square miles. So I know yesterday we tried to make something, or we did make something more urban-like.
I can answer that. I was part of the designation of that, so if that's helpful.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
I mean, Steve and I are both at the HCOG meetings, but since in the transit role, I go in that particular capacity. It is true, and so the HTA board made a recommendation to HCOG around this. It either needs to meet a certain number of a threshold for a certain number of trips per day, which just based on our population we struggle to meet, or be designated in the regional transportation plan. So. There are stops in Humboldt County that don't meet that state threshold because that's geared towards, the LA metro area. It's hundreds of.
Oh, we're getting there.
It's hundreds of riders a day, and we generally don't have that at stops. And so the HCOG regional transportation plan has designated those instead. And I thought that we had designated one in McKinleyville, but I could be mistaken
We left the option to expand to that.
Thank you. They're simply designated by the local transportation planning authority.
So can I back you up to?
So, can I ask, Third and H would be considered, because they have 354 a day?
Third and H is certainly.
354 with 38 buses, I think, or something.
Yes, that's one of our major transit stops.
What would be another one like?
But it's not any transit stop. I hope that's helpful. The Arcata Transit Center and
The mall.
The mall, thank you. The Bayshore Mall is a big transfer point.
So backing up to my question, I don't think Southern Humboldt is one of those.
No.
And so that would curtail building in that area. Could.
It could if people wanted to build like a large tract of residential.
And not low income, but moderate apartments.
Correct. Correct.
Yep.
So,
Through the chair, just clarifying, when Supervisor Bushnell is talking about curtailing, we're really talking about exemptions from the existing law is what we're talking about. So is that?
We're talking about projects, number one, that are subject to CEQA.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of the things that we try to do is look at our general plan.
Yep.
And if it's consistent with the general plan, and it's in an area that has a community plan or something like that, we can typically use the provision in CEQA that allows use of that environmental document that was certified for that area. And then we don't have to do additional CEQA analysis, which this wouldn't even come into play.
Yeah, so this isn't a prohibition necessarily. It's actually, we're just talking about taking layers off of the analysis in some cases. We're not talking about adding analysis.
Correct.
Right.
This should streamline analysis.
Right.
Where we do actually have to do VMT analysis.
So there's nothing that we're doing that's making anything more difficult.
That's not a true statement.
Well, I'm trying to just.
Over what we're doing now, if there are projects currently, if there are projects that would be subject to CEQA and we're getting to the VMT analysis,
Okay.
there is no ability currently to exempt them from that analysis.
Right, so we're still talking about exemptions. We're not talking about adding things. We're talking about removing things.
So what we're really saying is in areas where there are higher intensity of people, they tend to travel less miles, we're not going to require them to do VMT.
Right, thank you.
So I'm going to ask a question around that, though. Community plan areas in the Southern Humboldt area are very small, and construction goes outside of those community plan areas very often, including the Shelter Cove area. And so those folks would have to, they would be required to adhere to this. Is that correct or not?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
And I mean, I know it seems, we've had that discussion a lot between us, is the whole fairness of it.
Yeah.
But what we're being asked to do by the state, both from a traffic perspective and a greenhouse gas emissions perspective, and they are related, is to reduce the number of miles people
No,
drive.
I understand, but also it hits into the Carlotta and Hydesville area as well. There are many parcels out there that are out of community plan areas designation.
Well, and that does hit at one of the things Ms. Acevedo mentioned was that using the county-wide, or the city-wide, I'm sorry, unincorporated area-wide, option 1 would open that area up just, well, quite a bit.
Okay. Supervisor Bohn, then Supervisor Arroyo.
So, and I'm thinking of the areas much like Ferndale that doesn't have a major. Is there a way, since if we have a prerogative or we're being arbitrary, of taking in the fact of Southern Humboldt has, let's say, approximately 7,500 people down there in proper Southern Humboldt, and comparatively speaking, Greater Eureka area has probably 35, 40 when you throw in Cutton and everything else it could use that has buses going out to it. Is there a way to arbitrarily adjust for the population in the area? Because they have the same issues. They're on a smaller scale, and we're building them quite a few, over 150 units now that are in construction right now in Eureka, but a lot of that's going to be subsidized. A lot of it's going to be, so.
That could be done. And I think there are those who would advocate for that. The struggle with that is that we would have to go back and redo all the analysis that we've done. And if that's the direction of the board, we'll look for funding and do that.
Well, there's just a certain level of fairness or comparability for people that don't live in our perceived urban areas or what we're trying to make urban areas and don't necessarily want a 4-story apartment building, because they want their kids to play outside, but they want a place to store their things and stuff. So, in the outlying areas that have bus service, maybe it'll increase with that. They have more room to, I guess sprawl's the famous word, but I mean to use up more space because it's available.
Understand. I think that one of the things, and at the end of the day, this was kind of where I landed relative to the rural areas. We do not see huge projects come through. And so they would fall under the small project exemption. And I mean, maybe that's not enough, but I haven't seen anything over an 11 parcel subdivision in my time here down south. And so I don't know that we would be affecting anything.
Can I, well, Supervisor Roy is next, then I'll go.
Yeah, I just wondered if you could, I understand this is the, reduction of, that's a little bit different than what the Air Resources Board direction is. The new Air Resource Board state direction was to reduce VMT by 25%. Now we're looking at minus 15% exemption. I know those aren't perfectly matched criteria, but can you explain how we're getting to that 25% reduction through this?
So the 25% reduction is a reduction that includes not only new development, but existing development. It includes moving people from driving single occupant vehicles to being on transit, to using bicycles, to electric bikes, and that sort of thing. Whereas this really is focused on new development and reducing the number of miles that people are traveling, that we would expect them to travel for new development.
Do you think this is the right tool to get us closer to that goal?
I think this is a step in the right direction, absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I think the Planning Commission wanted to see it re-examined in 2030. That as we're re-examining the Regional Climate Action Plan that will be coming to you before the end of this calendar year, that will need to be re-examined. This will need to be re-examined. And so the lead up to 2030 will re-examine a lot of things to see how effective these are.
I'm going to go to Supervisor Madrone, but clarification, what was Planning Commission's vote?
Well, no, they were 2-2. They were split on the option 1 or option 2, but then when they said, board, here, we can't decide, you are going to need to decide, I believe they all voted yes. Yeah. Right.
Okay. Supervisor Madrone?
Yeah, so, John, as you know, in the approval of the town center ordinance yesterday for McKinleyville, there is a transit center proposed there. In addition, in recent discussions with Caltrans around the Vista Point Park concept, the development of the airport business park, further development at the airport, there is a new concept that it was Caltrans that brought it forward about a transit center on Airport Road right at Highway 101 that would serve a commuter route in particular with shuttles up and back and forth to the airport. Would either of those things change what we're doing here today? I mean, I don't think they would, but I'm just curious.
Well, if they were effective, what would happen is more people would be riding the bus.
Yes.
And so the VMT for those areas that it was serving would go down.
So that's a positive in both directions, regardless of which one. And it might be two, maybe a downtown center and it may be a highway center for different purposes, frankly. Okay, thank you.
So we're going to go out to public comment. I have one last clarifying question. Is there, and I hear what you're saying about you haven't had those developments come from the southern area, but is there a process to mitigate this if there were, because this will also affect Bembo, all of that area, it's basically all of southern Humboldt. And so what would be the process? Because there is no, I don't anticipate ever getting those bus stops down there that meet that criteria. Community plan areas are very small down there. So what would be the process?
So the process is keep in mind, they're already in the CEQA process. They're already doing technical studies on a bunch of things.
Okay.
One of those would then be on VMT.
In the like Bembo area, Piercy area?
Yep.
Okay.
And so it's just really determining, and doing the VMT study doesn't necessarily mean that, as Ms. Acevedo said, that there's a significant adverse impact. It's just having to do the study.
Who does the study?
Typically a traffic engineer.
Who?
A traffic engineer.
Who pays for the study?
Usually the applicant, the developer.
How much do those cost normally?
I'd be guessing if I told you right now. We don't see many of them.
But this would require it.
It required probably between $5,000 and $10,000.
Okay. We're going to go to public comment on Zoom, please.
Thank you, Chair. Caller 5603, I will unmute you and you will have 3 minutes.
Good morning. This is Colin Fisk with CRTP. The current California scoping plan for climate, as you heard, calls for a 25% reduction in VMT per capita. And we would prefer that the county adopt a threshold that aligns with that goal, but we can accept the proposed 15% reduction, which has been standard in recent years, as long as there's an appropriate baseline set. Now, staff have recommended either using the countywide average or the unincorporated average, and that would make sense for a city or for a smaller or more homogeneous county, but it doesn't really make sense for Humboldt. The CEQA guidelines provide information on how a baseline should be set. Specifically, the baseline describes either existing conditions or projected future conditions in the absence of the project. In the case of VMT, one way to think of it is how much driving a potential future resident or employee of the project would do in the absence of the project. That can be estimated by looking at the existing VMT in the immediate vicinity, but the logic breaks down over larger geographical areas. So, for example, let's say a project developer wanted to build apartments in Myrtletown. Potential tenants are presumably people who want to live in a place within a reasonable commute distance, which means they work or go to school somewhere nearby. They probably live or want to live in the Eureka area. They may also look at places like Arcata to live, maybe even McKinleyville or Fortuna, but they're unlikely to consider a place in Orleans or Garberville or Petrolia. So the baseline conditions can be the average VMT in Myrtletown or in the greater Eureka area, or even in the area stretching all the way from Fortuna to McKinleyville, but it can't be the average over the entire county because that's basically a meaningless number that masks large regional variations. The size and diversity of our county demand more than a single countywide baseline. And the idea of using only the unincorporated county average makes even less sense because city limits have nothing to do with how people travel, and environmental impacts under CEQA are not constrained by jurisdictional boundaries. So we ask that you divide the county into smaller subregions that reasonably reflect housing and job markets and establish separate baselines and thresholds for each region. The consultant Farron Pierce has actually made VMT estimates by census block group publicly available and have derived those estimates from the same 2022 streetlight data that the county has used for its estimates. So establishing sub-regional thresholds shouldn't be very expensive or arduous, but it must be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller 7718, I will unmute you and you will have 3 minutes.
I always find it interesting that CEQA is supposed to be an environmental assessment as effect on the environment. And yet now it's determined that if you are not a wealthy person or living in a certain category of financial housing, you have no effect on the environment and you're exempt from CEQA. So in other words, someone could go down and build unlimited things down in Garberville or that area, out of the area. As long as they hit a certain category of income for the people or things of that nature, they're exempt. I have a, you know, we're putting an awful lot of time and effort into a lot of these things. And I look at what I consider experiments in transportation. And the biggest experiment we've had is, I think, $20 million between Arcata and Eureka. And we were told that we were going to have all kinds of people commuting back and forth. And my observation is kind of a little close to what Rex mentioned yesterday in, I think it was 8th Street or I Street or somewhere between 17 by was the same happening between Arcata and Eureka. They had movies where hundreds of people were going back and forth on this thing. And I didn't see it happening when I was there. I'm guessing since the weather's changed, more negative for you folks, positive for me down here, you're having less people commuting on that basis. I strongly suggest that you go ahead and move forward with whatever John Ford recommends on these particular things. Don't spend a lot more money doing more studies, doing more diversification on this. Follow the minimum that you're required for this state, which of course gives us nothing but unfunded mandates that have major negative effect on what we want to do in Humboldt County. So best of luck with this one.
Thank you. That's all on Zoom.
Public comment in the room on this item? Hello again.
Hi, my name's Joanne McGarry. I was at the Planning Commission meeting where some of this was discussed. I love how we get down to just calling it VMT, and it really helps me in my brain to talk about vehicle miles traveled because it was part of the Climate Action Plan discussion. And as I spoke about earlier today at this meeting, the climate, the global climate, what happens anywhere in the world affects people elsewhere in the world. And for Humboldt County to really work hard and recognize that we are at a point in our world where we need to take urgent action on these types of issues. I just kind of want to say out loud, it makes sense to do as best we can to reduce the use of individual vehicles for people and improve our collective travel plans, whether you live inside a city or in a far-off way in a rural community in Humboldt County. We all collectively as human beings living here need to do what we can to change the way we are doing things now that are horribly impacting the planet and the climate.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. And Director Ford, do you want an option to respond?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks. I don't know that there is a lot to respond to. You heard the comment about developing subregions. That's similar to what Supervisor Bohn was bringing up. It can be done. It's more complicated. And what I think what the more broad approach does is it really highlights that there are areas that are appropriate to allow the exemption from doing the analysis within certain areas of the county. And the change that results in is that right now, everybody does a VMT analysis. Everybody does one right now. Under this, there would be certain areas that already have very low VMT that would not need to do an analysis. I'll give you an example. The Nordic project. The VMT analysis with that went through and identified the travel lengths associated with that area on the Samoa Peninsula. It was much lower than what the regional travel model right now shows for average VMT. And it identified that it was more than 15% below that. So it found a less than significant impact related to traffic. In this particular setting, if this were adopted, it wouldn't have had to do that analysis. That's the major change.
Can I clarify that single-family residents do this currently?
No, I'm sorry, only if they're subject to CEQA.
Okay.
Single-family residence is not subject to CEQA.
So everyone doesn't do it right currently?
Correct. I'm
Okay.
sorry, I misspoke. Everybody that's subject to doing environmental analysis needs to do this currently.
Okay. So I'm going to bring it back to the board. We're going to look for a motion.
Thanks. And while my question for the director is do you feel like there would be a significant difference in the areas that would be exempted from VMTs if we were to follow the recommendation of the caller around doing the regional analysis? Would it be, if we were to go down that path, we would pay to do a study that would take a look at that and more refined thing, but would it, just a gut check here in terms of the change in area, would it be much reduced or?
Well, I think if you made areas into smaller granular sections that were more homogeneous, there would not be areas then that stand out as having lower VMT than other areas already, because the areas are homogeneous. You've got small little sections.
Right.
And so there wouldn't be the ability to identify, well, they're already low, that area doesn't travel as much, and so you wouldn't be able to exempt things.
So you're telling me you think that there might not be much of a difference, is what I'm getting at. It's like
I think you would end up doing VMT analysis for everything.
Okay. All right, I feel that. Okay.
I have a question before, if you're going to make a motion. If
Yeah,
you're done.
and so then, basically, for a minute, I'm just really narrowing it down from just an environmental perspective or from a VMT perspective. Option 2 is the more conservative option.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm happy to make a motion that we find that the proposed policy for VMT threshold is not a project pursuant to section 15060C3 and 15378B5 of the state CEQA guidelines and adopt the proposed VMT threshold policy seen in attachment 2, establishing thresholds of significance and screening criteria for the purpose of analyzing VMT transportation impacts under CEQA, utilizing the countywide data, including the incorporated city data, to establish the baseline VMT and CEQA thresholds.
I'll second.
Director Ford, tell me how CEQA covers the Bembo area or the Shelter Cove area or the Sproul Creek area.
So Binbo, I believe, is outside the Garberville Community Plan area.
Yes, it is.
So that area could not, it may be able to qualify for the general, consistency with the general plan. And if it's determined to be completely consistent with the general plan EIR addresses all the environmental effects associated with that. We would use the 15153 provision that allows consistency with the general plan to be used.
So it's not a guarantee, though, that if there was a project to come into those areas, which are mostly, there's not a lot of buildable area in Garberville at all.
Right.
Very little in Redway. And so if there was a project that was to come, it would be outside of those areas. There's not, you can't tell me that it would fall under a criteria that would be allowed. If it was a bigger project than the 11 units, and
Well,
it was a moderate
So what I'm
income.
saying, if it comes in and is consistent with the land use and zoning,
Yeah,
and we believe that it's covered under the general plan EIR,
right,
it wouldn't be subject to CEQA.
right.
The things that are largely going to be subject to CEQA are things that are changing the general plan,
Mm-hmm.
changing zoning.
Which happens a ton down there.
Yeah.
Okay. Kaylee, I believe we need to do a roll call, please. Kaylee, can you do roll call?
Supervisor Bohn.
I just hope this isn't used as a weapon against developers later down the line. I will vote yes.
Supervisor Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Arroyo.
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone.
Yes.
Chair Bushnell.
No.
Motion carries 4-1.
I also will clarify for staff that this is my constituent base, and it's passed anyways, but it's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Understand.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next item, which is brought to us by Supervisor Bohn. You want to introduce?
Yeah, I do. Where'd she go? There they come. We haven't heard from the Family Resource Centers lately, and when we talk about things that make a difference in our county as we sit up here and argue all this other stuff, I think things that work towards our youth, creating a common area, the things that First Five does in conjunction and everything else. So I asked them a few months ago if, I know the one out at Petrolia that we helped get going 7 or 8 years ago is so successful, has a bill. It's so exciting to see for those out there, and especially in our non-urban areas that don't have a lot of berries. So with that, it's all yours, Dad.
Thank you, Rex. Thanks so much for inviting us today again.
Your mic's not on. No, on the neck.
Let me try this one again. Okay, thanks again so much for inviting us, Rex. We're really proud of what we do at the Family Resource Centers, but we cannot do it without the many partners, organizations, and friends in this room who support and partner with us on the work. I think we have a really brief slideshow, and then the focus of why we want to be here today is we actually had a video made about Family Resource Centers in Humboldt County.
I'm going to ask you to pull that microphone in because you're very quiet.
I apologize. I can be when it's necessary, Rex.
Okay, and I believe you have Amy, you have a clicker right there in front of you, and you can advance your slides.
So for those of you who are not familiar with Family Resource Centers, our goal is family strengthening across the county. There are 16 of us spread throughout the entire county, and you can see we are located all over. In places as small as Petrolia, we have 3 centers in Eureka, we have a center on tribal land. We are all over the county and have been since the 90s, when the first of our centers opened. As I said, I just wanted to be really brief and make sure we called out some thank yous before we shared our video, but I want to do a really quick call out. We have a bunch of friends and partners in the room, as well as a number of Family Resource Center coordinators. So Amy, if you'd introduce yourself, and then let's do a call out to everyone in the room.
I'm Amy Taronis. I'm the coordinator for the Southern Humboldt Family Resource Center.
And then I know we have in the room, I have notes here, so I won't forget anybody. Social Services, special call out to Monique, thank you. First Five and Marianne, Changing Tides and Carrie, Providence, Martha and Joy, and then the many resource centers we have here. So we have today with us in the room, Arcata Family Resource Center, Blue Lake Providence Community Resource Center, Jefferson Community Resource Center, the Manila Community Resource Center, the McKinleyville Family Resource Center, the Rio Del Providence Community Resource Center, and the Sohum Family Resource Center. This is not all of us, but we just wanted to show up and say thank you and show off some of our work. So, with
Thanks for having
that,
us.
do you mind starting our video?
Should be volume.
There should be sound with it. Technology is not my friend some days.
I'm not sure if we get sound through this.
Oh,
Okay, one moment.
Hold on, she's gonna try to.
thank you. I was going to say, I think we can maybe stream it through a, no, the,
There you
Oh,
go.
there you go. Her sound was off. We got it.
oh,
Maybe.
It'll be helpful to listen.
perfect, thank you.
When someone has experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences before the age 18, then they are twice as likely to develop diabetes, twice as likely to develop heart disease, 12 times more likely to attempt suicide. 50% of those classic adverse childhood experiences come directly from what's considered child abuse and neglect. If most of our ACEs are related to child abuse and neglect, then FRCs have that critical role of preventing child abuse and neglect so that children can be successful.
Family Resource Centers build these relationships with community members that really allows us to provide any type of advocacy and support for them whenever they need it.
Summers are expensive for families. If your kid's not in school, are they in childcare? Childcare is incredibly expensive in Humboldt County.
Summer is like a little harder because school-age kids, you know, we're used to having them in school, and so it's really nice that there's all this free produce here. My daughter also just sized up. You know, a lot of her clothes are too small and ready for a whole new size of clothing, so this is a really valuable resource, like for my family and definitely for many families, as you can see.
Jefferson actually has a program where they make a meal every day that anyone under the age of 18 can access.
I take my kids to the Jefferson Center every day. It helps me a great deal. Being a single dad, it's hard for me. You know, they have the clothing closet. My kids need some shoes, you know. So there's a lot of different resources here. So I'm just very grateful for it.
The period before age 5 is really critical to children's development. They arrive in this world absolutely able to be shaped by their experiences, whether those experiences are good or bad. And so it's just vitally important that they have the supports and the connections so that they're developing that brain architecture and that body response system that sets them up to be successful for their lives.
In our county, all of our resource centers are held independently. We call it community reflected.
We want to be able to support families in their own neighborhoods and not have to send people off to all these different places all the time.
There's not only one in every major population hub, but in many of the smaller and more rural communities as well. Anyone who's ever tried to access services through the system knows it's a lot of doors and a lot of repeating the same story and a lot of false starts and wrong turns.
A lot of times agencies have one very set thing that they're helping the family with. We're gonna help you with housing, we're gonna help you with food, we're gonna get your kid into daycare. If you come into the FRC, we're gonna try to help you with all of those things. And so we really get the full picture of a family, where they're at, what they need, and because of that, we build really deep relationships.
If you had to get court papers done, they would be right there. They can fax you court papers. They can reach out and help you get your stuff. They can help you fill out papers. Like if you were to get on unemployment, Social Security, they're always willing to help you get that started for you, or even food stamps and cowards. They never shut the door on your face. They were always there to help.
Everything that they do is really driven by a community process to be responsive.
What families told us in every community in Humboldt when they were interviewed was that they needed opportunities to take their children with them, but connect with other families. Playgroups can meet 1 to 3 times a week. They've got staff there to facilitate the activities, and then First Five also sends out what we call family support navigators.
Services like this means a lot to my family because it shows that there's communities out there that care about our kids, that care about what resources we do and don't have, how they can help us.
For our Hispanic families, they need to have people that speak their language so they feel comfortable in our community.
Yo creo que es algo importante para convivir con nuestros hijos un rato y para que nuestros hijos convivan más con los otros nenes.
Qué bueno que nos dan estos apoyos tan bonitos para nuestras culturas, que por lo regular somos hispanos. Yo tengo nietas y yo vengo a compartir aquí con mis nietas el evento muy bonito.
Some people might feel shame or guilt or think that their problems are too big, but if you're experiencing it, it's something that we can help support you through.
I was living in the local homeless shelter. I had just left inpatient treatment. My son and I really had nothing. You know, I'm sleeping in technically a stranger's home. And the FRC was absolutely there for me to walk in the door. Fast forward to 12 years later, I have another son, I have a partner, we've been together since that time. We now own a home, I own a car, I work a full-time job, I take incredible care of my children, and I get to give back. I keep, don't tear up. I get to give back to the community that gave so much to me in the beginning.
It really is beautiful to see folks who come in, get a little bit of support, and then really start to thrive in their own life. It's beautiful to watch.
When you support an FRC, you're really supporting all of the families around it.
One spoonful of honey with cinnamon before bed equals 0 memory collapse.
Nikki, can you-
The billion-dollar
Sorry about
industry
that.
doesn't want you to know. If you struggle with memory lapses, confusion, or
You can stop it.
Thank you. I just want to take a second. I do that work every day along with these other folks here, and we're just watching that video. It's just an honor to do the work that we do, and all of us are sitting here with tears in our eyes. So thank you for letting us show that to you and sharing in the joy of the work that we get to do with your families and communities every day.
Thank you for that. Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah, and that's why I brought this forward, because they kind of do this in the shadows, all of you guys. And you look around, and we're throughout the county. I mean, the how far-reaching you are, especially our rural areas and our urban areas. It's important you do it, and I know you love this stuff because you and I have been doing this and looking at it, and
Longer than I'd like to think about.
but the progress, you young kids, sorry, I'm old, so you guys are young kids. I mean, you guys getting into a job, it's kind of cool to start, to be working somewhere where you love and you see the issue, like the gal right there at the end. You actually see the fruits of your efforts and the rewards of your efforts. So I can't say thank you enough. And the partner agencies, Marianne, Carrie, Connie, supporting this. And the reason we're all aware, everybody up here is aware of you, but you don't come here asking for money and stuff every 3 months, so we're not as aware. Maybe you should come by and ask for more money. I don't know. But thanks for
I'll
what you
keep
do.
that
I
in
really
mind.
appreciate your,
Once a year.
your pops would be proud.
Thank you for that, Rex.
Thank you. I also want to thank the communities that support you as well, because it's not, yes, you guys do the work, but you also depend on your communities that largely support you and are so thankful for all of the FRCs in all of the communities. I know Amy is mine from Southern Humboldt, and I'm so appreciative to her and her staff. And I hear all the time how Amy goes and her staff go extra miles, and if they don't have it, they find it. And that is support from her community as well. And so it makes a huge difference in the very rural area of Southern Humboldt, clear to Blacksburg, clear to Shelter Cove, down to Piercy, or, Humboldt. But it is, you guys make difference in kids' lives, in parents' lives, and it's something you can see. It's attainable and see it. And I've seen many tears at the FRC and many happy tears, many sad tears, but it always is, how can we fix this? How can we help you? How can we do this? And so I appreciate that. Also, the partner agencies, Marianne and Changing Tides, and everybody here, I just can't say enough from, my district especially, but for all of Humboldt's. Anybody else? Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you so much. It's great to highlight the incredible work you do. And I think this is a particular moment where people are really looking to you all as a trusted source of information and of resources and ways to connect with what's available, and the sharing culture and community care culture that we have in our rural communities and our less rural communities. But people look out for each other here, and you're a point of contact where people can find that. And we are in some unprecedented times right now. I bet people are expressing a lot of fear and concern to you, and you're having to hold that for them too. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry that we're here. And I'm grateful that you're I think that trust is going to be everything in the coming days too. So, thanks.
Supervisor Bohn?
And I got to say thanks to Providence and the other healthcare organizations. Providence has stepped up. I know they've been huge in Lolita, but they're huge throughout the county with helping and outside of their work area, whatever. But they've been a great partner with the FRCs, and I know that they all can reach out to them. I mean, I know Jared Phelps helps you in immense ways. I'm sure it's not mentioned, but I just know that that's part of their caring pledge that they've all done. But Providence, you'll see their name, and they're doing some good stuff there. So I want to thank them.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I echo that. I know that one of your staff members or two are paid by that work at the FRC are from Gerald Phelps, correct?
Yeah, so Home Health.
Yeah, so Home Health, and then Sarah from Riadell, and does so much in the Riadell area. And I'm sorry, I don't know, if you're not in my district, I don't know you, but I'm glad you're here. And so it's huge that those partner agencies step up. We're going to go to Supervisor Wilson.
Thanks. Yeah, the family resource centers across the county are just extremely important. And where, sure, sometimes I think supervisors want to say you work maybe offline or not in the light, but in many times you're right there. And I would say especially in places like Blue Lake, for instance, it's just basically part of City Hall, really. It's like right in it. You couldn't be any more in civic life than that particular branch of this organization. And it was great to see the video because there were so many people in there I've known for many years. There's some in this room I've known for many years, and those folks have, if they weren't in this position, they were doing this kind of work and in other ways all the time. So I just want to really, and the partnerships are just extremely important. I think it was highlighted in the video in terms of like the only way that you're able to give in the way that you do and to operate the way that you do is through partnerships, because you don't as an organization provide all the services that you connect people to. But it's extremely important that there's one place that they can come to do that. And I have to tell you, we are hearing from families, especially that these are some tough times at the moment. And I will say, with the shutdown, it's going to get a little rougher. And you guys know it. It's coming. Yeah. And we really need to be aware of that and push harder to get those resources back online as soon as possible. And it's not just the resources that you guys are speaking to specifically, but we also have housing resources in our elder communities as well that we're gonna, which impacts everybody. They are part of we are all family, and so thanks for being there. And we're gonna work hard to have your backs as it come in these times that are coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Madrone?
What would we do without you guys, really? Thank you, every one of you, and all the centers, and Changing Tides, who had a wonderful 50-year celebration just recently, 50 years, as well as First 5 Humboldt. It's along with, as Supervisor Bushnell said, the community. It really is an amazing community effort, and I really don't know what we do without you guys, because you provide such incredible support to our families, both English-speaking and Spanish-speaking. So muchas gracias for all your efforts. We appreciate you from the heart. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to go out to public comment, and we're going to start with Zoom.
There is none, Chair.
Is there anybody online?
Yeah, no hands are raised.
Okay, so we'll go to public comment in the room on this item. If you wish to make public comment, please come forward to the podium. Hi, welcome.
Good morning, everybody. We came here for a different cause, but this was an eye-opening, segment. So we appreciate everything you guys do. We're also part of the sometimes unincorporated area that's underserved. So as a group, we'd like to offer anything we could do, if it's a canned food drive, whatever it may be, because this is quite an eye-opener for all the things you guys do for the county. Like I said, again, we might be a business in some of these areas, but we're also a family that lives in these areas. So eye-opening, we appreciate everything you guys do. And again, reach out. We are also sometimes neighbors of where the centers may be, so just feel free. I'm sure the other gentlemen in the room would love to also help. So again, just reach out. We want to help in any way we can.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning. Carrie Venegas, Changing Tides Family Services. I just wanted to say that I think you all just said it really well, but the work that we do actually happens because of the partnerships we have with the FRCs. Yeah. Because they are part of the community. They are rooted there. They do amazing work. I want to give particularly special recognition to Sarah and her team in Rio Del, because when emergency services, as you all know, we're still cleaning up from the earthquake. When emergency services leave, it's actually the FRCs that do the rest of the work and continue to support people. So their role, as Supervisor Wilson was saying, is sometimes kind of hidden, but for those of us who go out and visit or are part of our communities, we see you every day, and we really appreciate you. So I just wanted to make sure you all know how much you're appreciated and loved. So thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning, Marianne.
Good morning, Chair Bushnell. Thank you, Supervisor Bohn, for bringing this item forward. I just feel like I talk to folks across the state in different counties all the time, and I know you have this experience as well, that they do not understand the rural nature of our county and how difficult it is to serve families who, from your VMT discussion, we have families living throughout the county. And we are so fortunate to have 16 family resource centers grounded in their community, in their work, in knowing the needs of those communities, and those familiar, trusted faces serving families throughout Humboldt, like our public health home visiting, like WIC, our Changing Tides Family Services and their child care referral, like our playgroups. These are all things that are an essential network with the FRCs for our community that we need to keep supporting and talking about. So thanks so much for the opportunity to just honor the FRCs and their just incredible work. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item?
Yes, please.
Yeah, of course. Come forward.
Good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
I'm Monique with Social Services, and I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the FRCs, to Taffy, and the rest of the FRC leadership. We really appreciate the partnership that we have and the collaboration that we have, and just a big, big thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close public comment, and I'm going to bring it back to the board for a motion to receive and file.
I'll move to receive and file this report.
I'm gonna second. And then also, I just want to say, echo, and I know my colleagues up here feel the same. Oftentimes Amy will reach out to me and say, "Hey, blah blah blah," and she keeps me informed, and I appreciate that so much because I can't know everything, and if there's something going on in our community or she needs help or the FRC needs help, I am so thankful that she's able to reach out and ask for that, or ask what can we do here. It's so important to me to keep those connections, and Sarah as well. I go down to the one in Riadel often, haven't been there lately, but we'll get there. And I'm just so thankful that I have those connections and that you all have those connections to the communities. So we have a first and a second, and we have our little thingies here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your confidence means a lot to us.
Clap on this one. We're gonna do the tobacco. Oh, go ahead.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, the next item is a tobacco ordinance. We're gonna take a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back. If you are here for the tobacco ordinance, staff, you guys are welcome to come forward. Thank you. If Supervisor Madrone can hear me, we're going to start. Okay. So this next item is a status update from the Tobacco Retail Licensing Ordinance Ad Hoc Committee and Department of Health and Human Services Public Health Branch. I'm bringing this item, however, I'm going to pass it off before I go to staff. I'm going to pass it off to one of the ad hoc members to get kind of a statement, and then we'll get some stuff from you guys. I appreciate when I called and told you I was going to bring this item to get some information. I can't speak with the ad hoc outside of this forum, and so it was important to me in my district to be able to get an update on this. So I'm going to pass it to Supervisor Madrone, or Bohn, and I want to recognize that Supervisor Madrone and Supervisor Bohn are the ad hoc for this conversation. Supervisor Bohn.
Well, I started on this, boys, and I guess I don't pay enough attention, but I've gone over the meetings repeatedly, and the ad hoc, we've met twice. I got in trouble once. We're kind of just still separated on what I feel is in no better way of a miscarriage of how it was presented, and it was presented to the retailers. And since I was raised in a corner grocery store right next to Sequoia Park, I know how important certain things are to these vendors. And then some of these vendors I've known for when Sonny first came to town, I don't know how many years ago, and I've become friends with most of them. And then I met somebody that bought a market from a friend of over 40 years here just recently, and the whole deal closed. Everybody shook hands. Everybody was happy. And then he owns 2 or 3 other stores in other counties, and that became a problem. But this all triggered for me was when a young man of 89 years old, Peter Van Elia, took on, he has 6 stores here. He has 30+ stores in 5 counties, and the only 3 stores he couldn't close escrow on were 3 in unincorporated Humboldt. Now, 5 counties, and this was the only place he couldn't do. So I know that vast amounts of research and outreach and everything came up, but I don't think anybody understood that they were going to take a viable part of their business, not a part of the business we all accept, but a legally licensed paying business for years, and have it become a non-entity if they changed hands rather than going to, unless it went to a relative. And this has taken quite a bit of financial toll on one individual. It's actually degraded the business values. I've asked some realtors what this does to somebody's profits, and we're okay. We get a check every 2 weeks. They depend on who they get in the store, how they get them in the store, and everything else. And so I asked about it. I appreciate Supervisor Bushnell taking this on, because I was getting nowhere. So I would like a change, and what it comes down to is when somebody owns a grocery store that sells tobacco, and I even said I like the Sonoma model, because I know we did a lot of research, but we didn't check anybody around us. The Sonoma model is if you were on the State Board of Equalization 9 years ago, you could transfer it. That means you've made a commitment, and that's, most of these people have that commitment, a lot of them. But I would like to go to 5 years or something like that, so they're not just flipping them. But when I voted on this, I thought it was if somebody came in, built a new store, brand new, ground up, they weren't going to be able to get a license because we had decided arbitrarily how many there should be. I mean, we're at 2,500. Some places I see are 1,250. And I appreciate Mario's honesty. He says, we're just trying to get people to stop smoking. And I relate to that, but I think it's a lot like drunk driving. We have to educate them, unless we're going to, the next thing we decide if this wins, are we not going to allow any local liquor licenses? And then it goes on and on, fried foods, potato chips. So I would like this re-looked at to keep the viability. We sit up here and talk about that we're for small business. And we're going to see a lot of small business here today. Some are big business also. But I've got one retailer that is estimated he's probably paid over $100 million in taxes since he's owned his stores here in Humboldt County and some of the incorporated areas. That is an investment in our community, and he has asked for this. Others have asked for it. And I know there was great outreach, or they said there was great outreach. I'm having a hard time finding a retailer that they said I would never be able to sell my store and they would be able to continue business as is. So that's where I'm coming from. I know it's might be unpopular, but it's legal. It's legal. It's licensed. We've initiated a TRL where we can get extra money and do our investigations. I'm even a thing. First violation, second violation, you take a 90. Second violation, you take away their license. I'm fine with that. Education and enforcement. But the idea of taking money out of somebody's pocket because we feel that's the way we can combat it, there are still a lot of places, and it's not going to work. It's just going to hurt some small businessmen. Thank you.
Thank you. So I asked for this item because I don't want you all to do the work if the board is not favorable. I feel it's a lot of time and money and energy without getting the full board's thoughts. Also, I would really like for other jurisdictions to incorporate the tobacco ordinance, especially now that we have the nitrous ordinance. Thank you so much for all that help. And, you know, it really, I have heard from the jurisdictions in my town, in my district, which would be Fortuna and Riadel, that there are a few things on there that they're hesitant about, one of them being this. We made some upgrades already to the tobacco ordinance. And so I also, have recently been reached out by some folks in my district that are trying to sell their store, and it was really hinging on not being able to, who they're selling to is saying, if I can't roll that license, I'm not interested. And it is breaking their family. And so it is, I just want to get a thought process from the board so that you guys don't waste your time if we don't have consensus up here, but also to hear your thoughts on, what we can do. So, Sophia, I think I'm going to hand it to you unless Supervisor Madrone wants to add from the ad hoc. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, Supervisor Bohn and myself both sit on the ad hoc, and we have had differences of opinions about this particular ordinance and its implementation. I want to say that at least what my memory is of the presentations that Public Health gave to us here at the board was a very detailed set of information about the outreach that occurred. It didn't happen in a vacuum. It didn't happen, in 1 month. It happened over a long period of time, along with a tremendous amount of outreach that staff made in regards to looking at other counties, looking at other ordinances, and bringing that forth. And my recollection was that there was pretty strong evidence, and I'm assuming Public Health might be able to share that with us today, that there was very strong information that was presented to us that showed that there was outreach to almost every single outlet in the county, either via email or other direct communication that occurred. Sometimes it was with the managers, not necessarily the owners, but again, that's my recollection, that there was extensive outreach that occurred with every single retailer. This board voted 5-0 to support the ordinance, and it may be that some did not understand the implications. I can understand that may have been the case. We, as a board, we often have 1,000 pages to review before a meeting in regards to being prepared for whatever issues might be brought forward to us. But we did have a very robust discussion about this, and we voted 5-0. It was always my understanding that what we were trying to do was reduce the number of outlets down to a cap based on our population, and that the way that was going to happen was that as a business sold to somebody other than an immediate family member, that they would lose that license. So all of a sudden, it sounds like some people feel like they didn't have any communication, but my understanding was that there was every effort made to do that. I realize that can be a hardship, especially for a small mom and pop business. So in our ad hoc discussions, we've talked about a couple of things. One was the hardship that some of these businesses are feeling now that they realize the outcome that if they sell to somebody other than an immediate family member, they could lose that license. In some cases, it's very rural stores, like in southern Humboldt and Petrolia or Honeydew, or there are places in southern Humboldt, Dinsmore. I'm sure Supervisor Bushnell could identify a few others that are very isolated, Alder Point and others, where they're very isolated, and there may only be one outlet, if at all, to be able to purchase your cigarettes there. But given the health risks of tobacco that are well documented, it was our intention to actually try and reduce the number of outlets in the hopes that that might actually ultimately encourage people to stop smoking. It's true that alcohol is also a killer, and there's all those issues around that. There are other things too. We've dealt with vaping, we've dealt with nitrous oxide, and a lot of other issues in our efforts to try and not legislate people's behavior, but to try and make choices about health risks and trying to help our community move in the right direction in that regard. Is it going to be perfect when we do that? No, and there's always going to be some opposition. I think at the ad hoc there is pretty strong support for potentially modifying the ordinance to allow for a business that maybe the next closest place to go to buy tobacco is 10 miles away or 15 miles away. I forget what the number is, but again, public health staff can help share that with us. But I want to be really clear. I really, really very much appreciate the hard work of public health and our staff in really delving into this and trying to figure out what might be a way forward with this, and that's that ordinance. But could we modify it for that issue of very isolated stores? I think there might be support for that at the board. I certainly would support that under those conditions where there's simply no other option. And you know, if you can't buy it at a particular store and you got to go 10 or 15 more miles, then the argument could be made, well, that's additional vehicle miles traveled. That's additional safety risks of traveling on the highway even more and such. But that being said, the issue of getting rid of the loss of a license due to sale to somebody other than a family member is a split. You know, Supervisor Bohn would support that change to not lose the license, I believe. He's stated that clearly. And I don't support that. I think it was pretty clear when we passed the ordinance that that was our intention. And I still feel that way. The biggest case that first came to us actually involved the sale of 33 businesses, all in one lump sum. And out of that 33 businesses, 3 of them are in the county, one Garberville, one Willow Creek, one McKinneyville. And so 3 out of the 33 licenses would lose their retail outlet tobacco license, but the other 30 would not. And it is true that, you know, the cities aren't necessarily all aligned with this ordinance. This covers the county, covers the unincorporated areas. And we talked a bit about that, I remember as well, when this came before the board. So I appreciate coming back. I agree with Supervisor Bushnell that it's good to get a pulse of the board and see where we're at on this. And but mostly I really want to thank staff for your hard work and dedication to trying to figure out ways to help make our communities safer. So thank you.
Thank you. So I want to say, and I'm going to go to Supervisor Bohn, but I'm going to let you guys talk too. And I've stated to Sophia and to you that I didn't do my due diligence and understand all of what I was voting for when it came through. It was a lot of information. It was a big ordinance, and oftentimes when we get ordinances, we do modify them. We've already modified this one once. It came back, there was things in there that I got calls about that I immediately brought to you guys. We brought back to the board and we modified this ordinances. Brand new ordinances have sometimes 5-10 modifications to, as they get working, to realize that, oh, this isn't working that great, let's do a little change here. And I do appreciate the work that that you guys have done. I also appreciate the work that you have done around wrapping the nitrous oxide ordinance around the tobacco ordinance. That is one of the reasons I would love for the jurisdictions and incorporated areas to really come forward and want to be part of this ordinance also, because they have embraced that nitrous oxide ordinance throughout the county, which has been great, and you guys did that work. And so, I will own that it was my not doing my due diligence enough and digging in and not understanding that you wouldn't be able to sell your business and retain that tobacco license. And I've told you that, and I've told my constituents that as they've called me. So I want to give you guys an opportunity, but I think that we need to do a straw poll on the board to see where we're at. You can say, you whatever you would think. I think 5 miles is, because we are talking about vehicle miles traveled, and some 5 miles is quite a ways in the unincorporated areas, which is what we're really talking about. So my preference would be, if we're going to modify it, that we put a 5-mile radius on it. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Thank you, Chair Bushnell and your board. Just really quick, since we have members of the public here, and then those that might be tuning in. I'm Sophia Pereira. I'm the Public Health Director. I have Brianna Sherlock here, who oversees our Healthy Communities and WIC Division. That includes the Nicotine and Tobacco Prevention Program, and Mario Carlson, our Director of Environmental Health, that is responsible for the enforcement aspect of the tobacco retail licensing ordinance. Really appreciate the conversation starting here, and we definitely appreciate the opportunity to get, clear direction from your board of how you would like for us to proceed. We did prepare some slides to just go over a few things, and so I'm going to probably repeat some things that you all have heard, but just for the public's benefit. We received direction back in August of 2022 to develop a comprehensive tobacco retail licensing ordinance. It was adopted in July of 2023, and like you were mentioning, Chair Bushnell, we've made amendments both in 2024 and then this past June with that nitrous oxide sales ban. We amended the TRL. I'm going to start using TRL because it's very long to say tobacco retail licensing ordinance every time. But this last came to your board at the June meeting to amend the TRL to include a provision that would revoke tobacco retailers' license if the nitrous oxide sales ban was violated. So I just want to give the context of, some of where we've been. And at the adoption of that particular TRL amendment, your board discussed other potential amendments regarding the TRL's density or transferability clauses, which we will have some updates on. There was the ad hoc committee that was voted for us to work with. Since there have been questions around outreach, we have some slides that will go over that. So I'm going to turn over to Brianna to talk about the really extensive outreach that has been done by our team, give a bit of an overview about the TRL, and give a larger perspective of efforts elsewhere in the state, and then we'll share those potential options for amending the TRL for your consideration. And there you go.
Thank you. So our team, our nicotine and tobacco prevention team, has done 7 waves of outreach with the tobacco retail licensing ordinance and the stores in unincorporated Humboldt. This began in December 2022, which was after your board directed our team to work on developing a tobacco retail licensing ordinance. And this began with letters which were sent to all of the state tobacco licensed retailers in unincorporated Humboldt County to solicit input from those businesses on the TRL ordinance. Following the first reading and presentation of the ordinance in the summer of 2023, our staff made phone calls to all 60 state tobacco licensed retailers in unincorporated Humboldt to inform them that the TRL would be passing in July, and to provide general information and address any questions that businesses had at that time. In fall of 2023, our team went to all of the stores in unincorporated Humboldt in person to be able to visit them and provide some education and go over specifically the different provisions that were in the TRL with the stores. So they informed the retailers of the TRL, and they discussed the services that were offered by our branch in terms of being a resource to store owners and to store managers. Should they have any questions, for example, if the people that they purchased the tobacco products from were telling them, oh, you can sell this or you can sell that, they were encouraged to reach out to our staff person so that we could help direct, yes or no, that product would not be allowable under our local TRL. They also educated on the local, state, and federal laws. Outreach continued in spring of 2024 with phone calls, emails, and letters informing retailers about the local license application, providing technical assistance with the application, preparing stores for the compliance checks with the Division of Environmental Health, and our staff members, Courtney and Chelsea. Courtney is from Healthy Communities and Chelsea is from Environmental Health. Also hosted 3 in-person workshops throughout the county, one in Benbow, one in Willow Creek, and one in Eureka, which were open to all store personnel. Then in summer 2024, when the update to the TRL was made regarding the 5-foot provision, our health educator, Courtney, again went out to all of the stores in unincorporated Humboldt and educated them about the updated 5-foot provision. In fall of 2024, when the state passed the flavor ban, Assembly Bill 3218, I'm sorry, not the flavor ban, they passed that the state would be coming up with a list of what flavors were going to be allowable. Our educator went out and informed store owners and managers about that. And then most recently this last summer with the nitrous oxide ordinance, Courtney again went out to all of the retailers and educated them about the update to the TRL, as well as making them aware of the nitrous oxide ordinance. So the print is small on this, but this is an example of the type of educational materials that our staff handed out during fall 2023, which was after the TRL was passed by your board. And so this lists out all of the provisions in the TRL in a very shortened, condensed format, because as Chair Bushnell mentioned, the TRL is quite long. So in addition to providing all stores with a printed copy of the TRL for the review, our team also prepared this two-pager about the TRL. And so on the right-hand side there, you can see that one of the things which was listed is that the total number of tobacco retail licenses within the county shall be limited to 1 for each 2,500 inhabitants of the county. And then in the next section down on the licensing process, the very last bullet there says a tobacco retailer license may not be transferred from one person to another or from one location to another, with the exception of a tobacco retailer in good standing that may transfer to a parent, child, spouse, or domestic partner. So this was given to all stores in fall 2023 during their visits. These slides are taken from the May 2023 presentation that we did with your board. It was a much longer presentation. These are just the two slides that went over the proposed ordinance details, including the limited transferability to only a parent, child, spouse, or domestic partner. This means that tobacco retailer density will slowly decrease over many years, creating a healthier community, as Supervisor Madrone shared. And so just a little bit of a look at what's happening in the rest of the state. There are over 230 jurisdictions in the state of California that have a local tobacco retail licensing ordinance. Of those more than 230, only one has a transferability exception, as Supervisor Bohn has mentioned, in unincorporated Sonoma County. Approximately half of jurisdictions, 126 of them, have a TRL that regulate the density and or proximity of tobacco retailers. And then this is just an example of the types of tobacco products that are available in the market. Some of the impacts of our local TRL include that in 2022, when this process started, we had 60 state licensed tobacco retailers in unincorporated county. We now have 54, so 6 less. When our team started doing outreach and education with the stores, over 60% of our stores in unincorporated county were out of compliance with one state or federal law. That does not even include what's in our local tobacco retail licensing ordinance. That's just state and federal laws, which everybody should be complying with regardless. Now, with the waves of outreach and education, less than 5% of our stores in unincorporated county are out of compliance. The primary purpose, as we have talked about many times, of the tobacco retail licensing ordinance is to protect youth and to reduce the accessibility of commercial tobacco and nicotine products, as well as provide a local enforcement structure for local, state, and federal laws. It also provides the opportunity for us to build relationships with the local business community. Our tobacco retail licensing ordinance was based off a model TRL from the Public Health Law Center. And in March 2024, your board received a leadership award for the passing of a comprehensive TRL.
Thank you, Brianna. So, with the TRL, I think we've already covered, and your board has already discussed a bit about the legislative intent to enforce, state and federal tobacco laws and reduce youth's access to tobacco. And like has been mentioned, there's definitely several different provisions that focus on reducing access to tobacco, from having future retailers having distance from youth-oriented facilities to over time reducing the number of retailers selling tobacco. I know your board will be, having robust conversation and receiving public input, in considering a variety of different factors in terms of, what makes the most sense going forward. As public health, we feel strongly in maintaining the protections that are in place in this TRL. When we think about the health impacts that are caused and trying to prevent future health impacts for our youth, That's something we feel strongly about, and we recognize your board is considering a variety of different factors. And so what we've worked on with the ad hoc committee was, some different alternatives. So one being for the population and density clause in the TRL, giving an exemption for rural retailers if they're 10 or more miles away from the next licensed tobacco retailer in the county. And I'm just going to go over these high level, and then you all very well may have questions, and so then we're happy to answer those questions as well. The other option, and I think we identified, 5 or 6 stores that would meet that that particular exemption. Also looked at population by census tract, so really looking at unincorporated county and distributing that cap throughout the county so that there's not a concentration of licenses in one community over another to increase the likelihood that there will be in each census tract tobacco retailers that are still existing. That one definitely has required some more follow-up and research from our staff. So the first one is a bit more cut and dry. I just want to recognize, just in terms of the timing of this presentation, there's something that if your board would like us to look more into the census tract one, we would definitely need to do some more research on what that would look like. And frankly, we don't have the GIS tools to properly denote unincorporated versus incorporated for all the census tracts, and that was a barrier for us. So I just want to acknowledge, like, that one we're not going to be able to have as robust detail, but if it is something your board is interested in and giving us direction to look into further, we'll need to figure out the best way to get you that accurate information about how that would look. And then we did also look into Sonoma County's transferability exemption. It is something that we've, with all of these options, we've been in communication with county council on, and they've been, really key in helping us to do this research. And that provision in particular that Sonoma County has does need to be further looked into. And so if there are questions, I would just defer to county council on the questions that arise on that particular one. And so with that, look forward to any questions you may have.
I'm batting a fly, not you guys.
Okay.
There's one fly up here. Thank you. I do want to go to public comment before our board deliberates too much. I think Supervisor Bohn has a small comment question, and then we'll go out to public comment.
And the Sonoma County clause, I think I gave you a copy of that 2 months ago. I looked at and we have to look into it some more. But if I look at what you just said, there's only one unincorporated county that has a transferability license, because I'm about ready to go get some paperwork, because most of them have no issue whatsoever. And the 3 counties that I found that have something similar to ours are in front of the Board of Supervisors for every transfer. It's become a nightmare. And I understand all the health reasons. I was the most fortunate child in the world. My dad owned a grocery store, so I get cigarettes whenever I wanted. But I had asthma, so I couldn't smoke them. So I didn't have that problem as a youth. But as I look at all these other issues, and I did a little, I called them student body presidents and some other, the high school kids. High school kids aren't smoking cigarettes anymore. It's down immensely. They're doing the vapes, they're doing everything else, and they're easily accessible. We have smoke shops and everything else, and it seems like they're easily accessible and they're getting them. All I'm saying is, most of these, you mentioned the gentleman, as Steve mentioned, we're only talking about 3 out of 30 for this gentleman. This gentleman owns them in 5 counties, and everything else is transferred seamlessly except here. And then the company that's buying him has never run into this problem, and it's holding up a very large sale. But the other thing is he'll do fine. He'll do fine. But we have a lot of small businessmen. I mean, I mentioned Sonny earlier. He went from driving cab 15 hours a day, 7 days a week, to come to Humboldt County, bought a store, and is, I don't know if we're the promised land or anything else. We're slamming a door on a lot of small business people because we're taking an asset that has always been available to them, and we're deciding that, no, that's no longer available. Just we're deciding. And I voted for this, yes, but I have spent 6 hours going over the old meetings, and then I've talked to numerous retailers and all this outreach, and it was never said to them, or they don't remember, and I never hear it in presentation, you will never be able to sell your store with a cigarette license. I don't think that was portrayed, and I appreciate all the outreach and the inspections and everything else, but I don't know if that factor was portrayed. I noticed it wasn't even highlighted like the other stuff was highlighted that you brought up. So did I miss that? Yeah. How many pages is it? Yeah. I heard the grandfathering, I did hear the grandfather part. It was mentioned. I thought that meant that they would be able to transfer to anybody. But there are some pretty good, so I'll let it go to public comment,
Thank
but
you.
I'm just frustrated.
Thank you. So at this time, unless any other board member would like to add something small clarifying, we're going to go to public comment and hear from public comment, and then come back to the board to ask staff additional questions and make recommendations. Anybody else from the board, or can I go to public comment?
Sure, I have a question.
So I mean, I thought in those conversations that it was pretty specific that the transferability was to family members. I think it was said out loud, and I think that was the case. And I even thought that the calculation at the time was that the cap would be somewhere around 22 licenses, but now it's 29, which that was my memory anyway. But 29 is more, and that there was talk of a cap. I mean, which would denote that that there would be a reduction in licenses, and that was clearly discussed that would happen. I'm not sure how the board thought the reduction in licenses would occur if it wasn't at the time of these transfers. So I don't know. It seemed clear to me at the time. I will say, I'm just going to put it out there, if we're going to keep bringing back this ordinance, and I hear what Supervisor Bushnell says, you do have to do some edits every once in a while on ordinances, but also, we have other ordinances that could use updates as well. We have to, be efficient with our time and our staff's time. But I will say that I'm going to bring this up for whatever it's worth. It's like there's a movement to remove and seek conversion or whatever to non-filtered tobacco products. It's called Ban the Butt. It's the number one piece of garbage we find on the beaches are cigarette butts. There are jurisdictions that have been moving towards banning cigarette butts, or basically filtered tobacco products. And we'll see how that takes effect. It's a fairly new concept, but again, it has impacts on our environment. And so for me, if we're gonna keep bringing this ordinance back, I'm gonna keep asking for analysis on the trajectory or the ability for us to consider filterless tobacco products moving forward. That's kind of where I'm at. Happy to hear public comment.
Thank you. I want to remind you that this board challenged the ad hoc to discuss this and to suggest some edits. And so while, and that wasn't too long ago, I don't know if you remember, Mike, but I don't want the staff to do the work if this board doesn't agree. That's why we're here today. Also, while you may have understood, as I clearly said, I didn't understand the implications of the entire ordinance. So it wasn't clear to me, and I will restate that again. I'm taking ownership of that, and I have told Sophia and Brianna that. So we're going to go out to public comment, and we're going to start with the Zoom.
Thank you, Chair. Caller 7718, I will unmute you, and you will have 3 minutes.
Ken Sawatsky calling from Mexico. We haven't had the education down here, and smoking is very prevalent. I take my old paint cans and I paint them red, and then I stick cigarette butts on them with glue, and I put the caps on them so people will throw them in there. I did have a question. I was speaking with one of the supervisors today regarding can you buy cigarettes online. So I did a little search on it and came up with Tobacco.com online cigarette store. When you buy cigarettes in the U.S., it can be difficult. The convenience factor is not as on your side. The cigarette store and tobacco products are not readily available if you want to buy cigarettes online. Tobacco.com is the answer to your problems. You're able to purchase cigarettes on the internet. Some people are not aware of this possible, but your wishes have finally come true. Try it out today. There's every single brand you'd want on there with discounts and everything on there. So people can, no matter where they're at, I guess if they get any kind of delivery, can buy these things and have them delivered to them. There's nothing on here that indicates this is not possible to do, but there may be other complications. With my limited research, I think that is one option if people say they can't get them. Everything seems to be deliverable online these days. I pretty well recall the discussion along the lines of what Supervisor Wilson recalled. I can understand it was a very lengthy discussion. There may have been room for some possibly not understanding. I'm not obviously in favor of smoking. The nice thing about this ad and really big things, every single pack says smoking kills. I do believe that's true. So anyway, I guess we're going to re-regulate today or take another vote on what happened before, and we'll see what happens. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this very negative health consequence product out there.
Thank you. That's all, Chair.
Okay, we'll go to public comment in the room. If you have a comment that you want to make or make a statement according to this ordinance, now is that time to do that, and you'll have 3 minutes to do so. Hi, welcome.
My name is Gurpreet Soul. We have been here from my family and us 30 years. As Rex told us, I was a kid when I met Rex. So, I mean, everything is, when the public health reach out to us, all we understood, we need to apply for new license. And that's what we did. We did not know that we have to, if we sell the store, the license not going to be transferred. That's what our understanding was. I called a couple of times too, like you can see last couple of years, there might be like 5-10 different smoke shops opened up recently. And I called them like, they can sell everything, even legally or illegally. Hey, what you guys doing about it? They say they don't have fund. They can't do anything about it. Our business is dying because of that. And now we can't even sell it. That's the, another problem. As the caller mentioned, a cigarette you can buy online. It comes to your door. You don't need to go anywhere. So whoever's going to smoke it, they're going to smoke it. I mean, I'm not favor to selling cigarettes. If we need to stop it, we should stop it everywhere. That's all. Thank you.
Sir? There's a member of the board that's going to ask you a question. We're going to continue forward with public comment, and then he's going to call you back up.
Yes, no problem.
Okay. Any other public comment on this item? Someone needs to come forward. I'll be closing public comment. Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hello, my name's Dan Noga. I own Country Club Market on Humboldt Hill for 38 years. In the time I was there, the ordinance came through to have a tobacco license, which we applied for. They came, they inspected, we were under compliance. In no time did they let me know that we could not transfer the license. Also, there's a lot of marijuana shops that have opened in the past that the board has approved of. Ingesting any smoke into your lungs is not good for your health, yet there's tons of marijuana shops that are being approved and there's no restrictions on them when the smoke going into your lungs is bad for your health. Also, liquor licenses. Liquor is bad for your health, just like cigarettes are. Yet, a liquor license is transferable. So, I don't see the problem with transferring a license from one retailer to the next retailer. I understand if you don't want a new retailer with a tobacco license.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
comment.
you.
Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna, Sir Tom's gonna go and then you can go.
Hi, my name's Tom Biro, and I own the Redwoods Market and Deli in Myers Flat. Me and my wife have owned it for 5 years, and we didn't get any information on the new ordinance. Chelsea has been by our market several times, and I don't recall her mentioning to me that if you were to sell your business, that the license was not transferable, or the person purchasing the business would not be able to apply for a new one. Myers Flat's a real small town, and 90% of the people that live there can't drive or don't own a vehicle, ride bikes, or walk up to the market, and 90% of them smoke cigarettes. I mean, it's just a fact. I mean, it's kind of a crazy little town. But our market's been there for about 50 years, and it's always been able to sell tobacco. And we're in the middle of trying to sell our business, me and my wife, and the person purchasing the business does not want to purchase it unless he can apply for a new license, or we can transfer our license. Well, our family relies on the sale of this business because we want to move on and do something else. My wife's a full-time bus driver for the school, and she works at the market. Well, it's getting to be too much, so we're trying to sell our business and do something else. So we're thinking about opening another business, but without the sale of our current business, that's not a possibility. So I don't know if I was sent a letter about the changes, and I didn't receive one that I know of, and my wife never got one, so we didn't really know about this until just recently. So it's kind of important for us to be able to move on, but people are gonna, like they said, people can buy them online, order cigarettes. Well, a lot of the people that live in Myers Flat don't even have a phone or a computer or a place to live, for that matter. They just come out of the woodwork, or they walk up to the market to purchase cigarettes, and the closest other market that does is I think 6-7 miles away. And if we were to sell
Tom,
it-
I'm sorry, that's your 3 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Hi, welcome.
My name is Amrik Singh. I work at store for 6-7 years on Blue Lake. And what is my observation is, I'm not smoking, I'm not drinking. But people who are drinking or smoking, they have to buy cigarette. And all these countryside store dying, they are disappearing every year. And if anybody buying cigarette, they buying other stuff from the same store where they buying cigarette. So all these stores, they will get disappeared because they don't have enough business, and other people will get suffer because they don't get other items, because they're gonna close those stores. That's all. Thank you so much.
Hi there, Roland Treeherd. I just want to ask the board to be fair in your thoughts and comments here, and apply the same train of thought that maybe has been applied over the years when the board has made decisions along the cannabis industry line, as we saw changes going on there, and rules and regulations that you put into place. Consider the mom and pop legacy folks that were in that industry, if you took out the label of cannabis and you called it A, and then we got tobacco sellers in these retail markets, the small retail markets, there B, are we applying the same principles and fairness in our decisions? Supervisor Madrone talked about the stuff that you see that's hundreds of pages long sometimes. You don't get into the small fine print. Supervisor Bushnell says the same thing. Staff pointed out in their example on the screen one line that applied towards the, you can tell, I talk for a living, but I'm nervous up here in front of you guys. The one small line in the outline of everything that the ordinance said, but one small line pertained to really the issue that most of the people here with me are addressing. I don't smoke. I totally go for the premise of what we're trying to do here. But again, we have to look out to the livelihood of the people that have invested into our community with family, with finances and so forth. As the previous speaker just said, it's not just the tobacco that they come into the store for. They come into the store to get the tobacco, but they buy the carton of milk, they buy the chicken. If they're not going into that store and they have to go somewhere else, they didn't just lose the tobacco sale. They've lost the income to their family of these other products too, and it changes. So that's all I'm asking is, I think staff did a good job in getting the mechanics shared as the ordinance came into place and licenses became required, but maybe failed in notifying that one small line that, by the way, store owner, you've just lost the value of this in your product if you ever want to sell. So I just ask for consideration on those regards, and thank you very much.
Thank you. You're never nervous on the court.
I know. If I was here without you guys looking at me, it'd be better.
Any other public comment on this item? I'm going to close public comment. Please come forward if you have some. There you go. It's not nervous. It's not bad up here.
Not nervous. Some of the other folks may feel a little tough time because of language barriers or other things. And, you know, more about that, just a little bit. We usually don't feel marginalized in this day and age, but the fact that the outreach, we're in the stores all the time. To be here, I had to call my wife to go help out, work the counter. So if we're in the store all the time, how did we miss all the outreach is the question. Secondly, if there was outreach, we would have given input. The two pictures they showed of the sets of tobacco, both were flavorless, yet they pointed out one was a flavor set and one was a post-flavor ban flavor set. If we had been around, while we're not smokers, we're not championing smoking or tobacco usage, we do intimately touch the product every day. We may not even know about it. Before I worked at one of my dad's stores, I didn't even realize there was 20 sticks in the box. We just don't know these things, just like a non-smoker, but we do still interact with the product. So we could have actually given input on how to address and accelerate the curb of the usage of product in a different way, rather than arbitrarily saying we're going to set a limit based on a population of a huge geographical area. And the 5-mile, 10-mile radius thing from one spot to another doesn't work out in our geography either, because we have a lot of seniors who, again, like Sean was saying, do not drive, and we're the only spot where they come to buy everything for their week or that day, whatever it may be. So there's a lot of information that we may have given to the board and to the health department had there actually been input asked, or even, you know, if we'd come to the meetings. You know, now that it's post-vote, post-passing, it's a little bit of a different situation. And I told the gentleman in our group, hey, even if you can't go up there and speak in English, maybe just go up and say whatever you want to say in our language. That does show there's a lack of outreach, lack of, you know, just involving us in the process. There's other jurisdictions that do have this, but there is more than one county or more than one jurisdiction that has a transfer exception. I have relatives who are in this business. Our community does largely, you know, operate these kind of stores. So we do hear things in the 2 weeks that this has come up in my life. I've talked to other people. So if we'd given the chance to give input, we would have given more ideas on how to do this. Prices, pack sizes, there's many other things that could have been done, rather than we're just going to axe stores based on a store limit or a distance limit. If you're grandfathered and the business has been there for 60 years, I had multiple customers who wanted to come, but it's a working day. some of those who do work or can drive, but it was a 9 to 5 time. They can't be here all day, and we don't blame them. But there has to be some thought and process given to this part of the ordinance. Thank you.
Sir, and anybody in the audience, if there is anybody that wants to speak that needs a translator, and if someone in the audience is able to do that, you can come forward and someone could translate for you if they're available. Is there anybody that wants to do that? So you're also allowed, it's 6 minutes. It's 3 minutes and 3, yeah. And so, sir, would you be translating?
If that's okay. I will try to
Yeah,
English.
yeah, please come forward. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, there no any information or nobody in person or by email. We don't know about this.
Can you let him know if he wants to speak in his?
ਜਿਵੇਂ ਵੀ
Yeah.
ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਆਈ ਹੈ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਬੋਲ ਲਓ। ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਓਕੇ ਕਰਤਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਮੈਂ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਸਲੇਟ ਕਰ ਦੂੰਗਾ, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ।
Yeah.
You can say it for him.
Yeah, he can say English.
So again,
go
ahead. ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਚ ਬੋਲ ਦਿਓ।
ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਇਆ, ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਟੋਰ ਤੇ ਆਇਆ ਬਾਈ ਔਰ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਚਿੱਠੀ।
ਸਾਰਾ ਦੱਸ ਦਿਓ ਫਿਰ ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰ।
ਓਕੇ, ਸੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ 30 ਸਾਲ ਹੈ ਸਟੋਰ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਡ ਅਪ ਕਰਨ ਨੂੰ, ਉਹਨੇ ਸੋਚਿਆ ਮੈਂ ਸਟੋਰ ਸੇਲ ਕਰੂੰਗਾ, ਮੈਂ ਰਿਟਾਇਰਮੈਂਟ ਲਵਾਂਗਾ। ਜਦੋਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੇਚੂਗਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੇ ਲੈਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਪੂਰੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਹੀ ਵੇਸਟ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਵਿਚਾਰੇ ਦੀ, ਇਹ ਫੈਮਿਲੀ ਦੀ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਹ ਗੁੱਡ ਆਈਡੀਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ।
So again, he wanted to say that the outreach was not there, that he's in the store. His family, other families have worked there for many years, sometimes 20, 30 years, and they built this thing up as their retirement or pension. There is no 401k for a small business. They may have a private thing here and there, but there's no pensions, there's nothing for them. This business is the pension. And by doing this, where it diminishes the value of these businesses, like his and mine, that retirement basically is gone. If somebody loses a lot of portion of their sales, they will not be able to sell the business. And he's saying if there had been some notice, they would have been more aware of the topic that was at hand.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we're good? Okay, so I'm going to close public comment. Supervisor Madrone is going to have a question for the first commenter, but I do want to say that I know that the outreach did go out, and part, of that responsibility also is to the supervisors in your district to let you know what's happening. I was approached by several in my district that said, hey, what is this? What's going on? And I was not negligent. I didn't read every bit of it. My fault. And so I just, staff did do outreach. Whether they expressed that to you, that the license wasn't transferable, I don't know. But I do know that the outreach happened. And also the supervisors knew, and public hearings happened. And so there was a lot of information that happened around this. Once again, I'm going to own my own mistake of not reading every single line. So who was the first commenter? Yes, please come back forward.
Thank you for being here today. My question was, which store do you represent?
I have 10 stores all around the Blue Lake. I just sold it a year ago. Then United Gas on Myrtle Avenue.
How many stores do you own in the unincorporated area that would be affected by this ordinance?
Cask and Flask and probably 3.
3 stores?
Yeah.
And you represent all 3 of those?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And then there was one gentleman that identified that he was representing Myers Flat.
Tom.
Also, thank you for being here, so that would answer that question for you. Thank you. And then there was the last gentleman, the tall gentleman? Is he still here? Or, there he is, yeah. I was curious, no, the other gentleman, he didn't.
Oh, Roland.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I just was curious what store he represented.
He is he's real estate, and he sells real estate.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, so we're going to come back to the board, and Supervisor Wilson said something to me, wasn't clear why this was coming back, and so I'm going to reiterate that it is part of the ad hoc. I wanted to get some feel from this board along the lines of what the ad hoc has been working on, so that your staff knows which way and direction to go or not to go. So that's why this item came back today. So Supervisor Bohn.
And I guess it's because I'm old. I don't have the recollection. So like I said, I spent some time on a Sunday going through the meeting. And I do not doubt the effort and the concerns that our health department had. And I've got documentation where they hit 1 or 2. But I hit no less than 20 retailers, and they were never specifically told that their asset was going to be diminished in value. Now, we dropped 4 or 5. Some of it is the small grocery stores are going out of business, and we're doing a pretty good job up here making sure we can get some more out of business. But I don't think that's how we want to do it. I think the idea of small business, I mean, I keep hearing the backbone of the United States is the small business person. And there is no other way to look at this and like I said, I did extensive outreach to other counties, and they said, we've never had this problem. So I can't believe the stores over there are changing hands and everybody's going, okay, I'll just not do it. It's a vital source to sell other things. And it's perfectly understandable. They're going to go somewhere else. They're not going to stop and get all their shopping that they used to do with you and then get their pack of cigarettes. And again, I'm not advocating smoking, but we don't have a ban on it. We're talking about maybe cigarette butts. I think the better thing to do for the beaches and everything else is just to disband smoking out there, but then we're going to have the idea how much do we tax to enforce this. So as we move forward, I can't personally, and like I said, I went through and I'm going to spend a whole bunch of time probably tonight watching the tapes again to see if this came up specifically. I heard grandfather, and I said, okay, that's going to mean somebody that's made an investment, and not necessarily less, because this is new to us. This is another, way to monitor or source of income or whatever the case may be, to put a burden on. Because I remember when this passed, everybody's mad about the $365. Is that right? What do we charge annually for a cigarette license?
I don't know exactly. There's an application
I
fee.
hope
It's
you-
right around $365. We did receive a Department of Justice grant to subsidize that application and renewal fee for a year. So retailers haven't paid anything to be licensed at this point.
They did pay to begin with.
The application fee.
Yes.
You're correct.
And the
Sorry.
first
Thank
year, right? The retail, because that
That was
Department
included.
of Justice came second. And thank you for doing that. I was going to say that.
So I'm having, and like my friends out here that I remember watching on a trike in front of the store, now managing their own stores and growing to a big part of our economy, which is sales tax driven, and that's as big, but this is a person's choice. So what I would hope, I used to have a sign out at Redwood Fields for 24 years that the county paid me $300 the first year to have it out there 24 years ago that said no smoking, the anti-tobacco thing. I can't remember the gals, lives in Blue Lake, and I never billed for that because that was the one main sign I had out that everybody saw when they came in, because I truly believe in it. It's probably not the best thing. It's a person's choice. And so by actually cutting them off, I just don't think this is right. I think we need to respect our small business community better. They are making a plea. I was going to ask Roland if this doesn't just take 25% off the value of their business. Myers Flat, they won't buy it. They're just, the person won't buy it. There's other stores. Paul up on Country Club, and this probably hit closer this way. I go to this, and he was mad originally at Dan because he thought he withheld. Dan's, I've known him 40 years. He's honest as the day is long. He would not withhold if he would have known. He said they used to come in and tell him, you can't have this, you can't have flavored, you got to have it set back, you got to put a screen, all the things we did. He complied. He did not know he would be able to transfer. And it really hurt me when Paul says he has other stores in other counties, never had a problem. He said, I wished I'd never come to Humboldt County. That rings a bell for me. He wishes he'd never come to Humboldt County. And we're trying to get businesses here, and at the same time, let's see how many we can close. I thought we would get to this fabricated, since it's just an arbitrary number anyway, I thought we'd get to this 29, 22, 11 through attrition, stores going out of business. They're not going to rebuild. I know some of the ones that have burnt down or closed up in Eureka are in Eureka, so I guess they don't count against us. But there are stores in southern Humboldt that have closed that had cigarette licenses. I've got some in my district that have closed that don't sell cigarettes any longer. Some have closed because they don't want to pay the $365 a year because they used to have, a big one is probably the bars and stuff that used to have cigarettes. And they said, well, they can get them at the store because you can't smoke and sell. I'm just saying, if we're going to turn our backs on these guys that have made a commitment to Humboldt County and to the United States to come here for a better life or maybe a different life, I don't know. It is hard for me, and I will apologize all day long because I had no idea when that came to us. And I've looked through the tapes. I'm going to look again for the robust conversation that we were telling people that they would never be able to sell their stores, because I don't remember that part, and I've yet to see it in the videos of the past meetings. So I am sorry, gentlemen, if this does not go to.
Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you. I'd like to start out by thanking the public for coming out for this item, and thank staff for the work on this. We have had no less than 10 meetings about tobacco retail licensing, and I remember this transferability conversation very well. So we're not here to relitigate that. We're here to figure out what we want to do moving forward, and I know that staff just want clear direction from us. I do want to address a couple of points. I think this is going to emerge from conversation. The solution will emerge from conversation. I don't have a specific suggestion, but I do want to address a couple of points that were brought up. I thought it was interesting around DUI being about reduction, being about education, and just thinking of that as another public health challenge, and one that was very impactful here in Humboldt. Education is actually one of the least effective ways to address DUI. The effective ways to address it are policy changes like reducing the BAC allowed and enforcement combined with prevention approaches. So a combination of physical things being done and enforcement with education, going along with it, but being one of the least impactful strategies. So similarly with tobacco prevention and cessation and control, the strategies have been like physical reduction of licenses and access. And in doing that, we realize there are broad public health benefits, but there are consequences. So we're talking today about those consequences. I appreciate that. But the strategies that staff have proposed have been really well researched and well documented. Never were we told that this was without impact to some of the retailers. It was that here are the strategies that work for public health. We recognize that, and I would actually love to see more restrictions on smoking products. I don't know that there's an appetite from this board to do that related to cannabis products, but I recognized, one of the public commenters spoke to that, and there are, differences perhaps in the carcinogen levels between the two products, but both, I will acknowledge that smoking is not good for human health. We have control over the unincorporated part of the county, not the cities. So folks have said, there's, people being able to buy and sell tobacco in cities, and we don't have control over that. We don't have control over tribal lands. There are pretty significant restrictions on getting them in the mail because of the PACT Act, and the Postal Service doesn't sell them, so it has to be licensed. sellers that verify age, and it's somewhat more restricted, and most of the delivery companies do not service this. So I think we're making a dent in the access to cigarettes, which obviously it doesn't just impact the individual. It impacts young people through secondhand smoke and people who have no control over their exposure. And, you know, we know that the profit margin for these products is relatively low too, because of, you know, there's high taxes, and I get that it brings people in the door to buy other things. But, you know, those are the kind of considerations I'm using as we've approached this. And again, we do know that there is some impact on businesses. So I'd love to see a way that we can preserve the cap to the extent possible. If this board wants to make recommendations about what that looks like, then great, but I don't want to see the cap just continue to grow, because that defeats the purpose of this whole ordinance. This is an area of public health where it has known benefits, and we have a choice to make about about whether we want to protect people from the harms of not just cigarette smoke for the individual, but the other people it impacts. And, you know, I just want to see us preserve the cap to the extent possible. So whatever suggestions you may have about how to do that in a fair and equitable way that also supports small businesses, but doesn't grow the cap over time, I'm happy to hear. And I think we just need to give our staff direction. And I'm frankly like a little bit miffed about the way that we're talking about the outreach that has happened and the meeting conversations that we've had. So not very often do I get ruffled by this board, but thank you for just kind of bearing with it to the staff that are working on this.
Thanks. I too would say that one of my issues is that I want the other jurisdictions to sign on. And I think that if we do make some accessibilities or some different language for transferable, if you already currently have one, that we could get the other jurisdictions to sign on. And I am not a cigarette smoker, and I do not like it, and I do not like to be around it, and I've said that many times. But I do know, I do come from a family of smokers, unfortunately, and they would drive 500 miles to buy cigarettes when they are out, which is a bummer to me, you know, that it's that addictive. So I get that. I would love, for me, I guess what I would like is that if a store currently has a tobacco license, and I would like to put probably a 5-mile radius on it. I'll reference to Myers Flat, who is the only store in the town. Or we could say if there's one store in a town and they sell cigarettes, something like that. But Myers Flat is the only store there. The next only store is Miranda. And then it's another 7 miles to Garberville. So you see what I'm saying? It's, and so something like that would be my preference. I would like to stick with the category that Supervisor Arroyo is talking about and not allow new businesses to, if we're above that cap, new businesses to get a license. But to, like Supervisor Bohn referenced to, through attrition, through stores closing, and not new ones opening, I think we'll get down to that cap. And then once we're under, then there would be an application process. Is that correct? Yeah. But to allow the stores that currently carry tobacco, if they're trying to sell their business, and that is going to hinge on the sell, to allow that to happen. And then through attrition or stores closing, whatever, to try to get down under that cap. I also really want, I can't say it enough, really want to encourage the jurisdictions to want to sign on. And so I think a little bit of lighter language around transferring current licenses will help that. So that's my preference. And I'm going to say it 100 times. Thank you for your outreach. Thank you for your education. And thank you for what you do. Supervisor Wilson.
Thanks. I mean, I think the main goal of all this is to reduce smoking and the harms of smoking and the harms of tobacco in general and nicotine. And I've heard that it's choice, but addiction is not a choice. We talk about what drives people to want to go great lengths to get cigarettes, and that speaks to the addiction, not the choice. No one's choosing to spend half their day to try and find some cigarettes in some other town or whatever it is. It's not what they want to be doing. We've definitely, through restrictions, reduced smoking through ordinances in California and many other places. And I can remember very clearly when we removed tobacco products and smoking from bars. And I remember very clearly the sort of language around the Armageddon that would occur at these businesses if that was to happen. And, well, it turned out, some months later, people still went to bars and people still went out and they still did their thing and they smoked outside for a while. We did have an issue around cigarette butts, again, getting into gutters because people were outside smoking. Again, I'm going to be clear. I think we should get rid of filtered tobacco products in general. So I just want to say that to address another issue, but I think the way that we deal with these changes over time is through caps, and that we do this through attrition. But I think the attrition that we were talking about was the transfer of these licenses, and I think there was specific discussion around that's why we had it. It was for everybody, and then we modified it to not be an issue for family members. I mean, that's why I think the language is actually in the ordinance, is because the original language was non-transferable at all, and then it was modified for family members. So I think there was some discussion around that, and so I strongly favor and want to see a cap. If there is discussion around area, some sort of geographical construct around that, if a majority of the board wants to really look at that, I'm personally not. That's not where I want to see this go. But if that happens, I would say that's it should be fairly, the distance should be more than 5 miles from my perspective, because otherwise we're just making it we're doing planning around specific applications versus what we're trying to get to. So when one person comes in and says, well, this doesn't fit what I want to do, then we're like, then do we come back and reorient our ordinance once more? I think it feels a bit like that, and I want to make sure that our policy is broad and is fair, makes sense to everybody. The one thing I would ask for is, I think, is the application or the permit itself, the piece of paper we hand to somebody that says you are an owner of this asset, which is the permit, this entitlement. Is that a Humboldt County derived piece of paper? You know what I'm saying, like a certification?
Yeah, that's a DEH developed fillable application.
And I would say that if we're going to be retaining the cap and the non-transferability of this, that it should if it doesn't already, because I've not seen it, that piece of paper should say very clearly with a box around it, this is non-transferable to any other business unless, or something, or even like may not be transferable, or because we don't know what the caveats are, but be just really clear. This piece of paper, this license is non-transferable, saying it very, very clearly. We've talked about this at the planning department around the owner-occupied permits. It's like it should say very clearly non-transferable, so that everybody really understands, and there's not this sort of assumption as, oh, I didn't know. It should be, in red letters. I don't know. I'm telling you what to do, but something that gives that assurance to everybody, or that understanding to everybody. The other part about this was an expression around saving the mom and pops, and I think we see that in a lot of other, even around even around cannabis, sort of the the multiple ownerships and a limit on sort of the franchising or the franchises to have access to those transferabilities. And so in cannabis, we made some adjustments around that. I would say that in this case, if that's something that is considered, again, I am trying to, if there's a majority that wants to move forward with some of this stuff, I'm offering some ideas about, trying to get a middle ground to that space, but I am not in favor of necessarily moving these things forward. But in what I'm getting at is like limiting the number of licenses in terms of the transferability. Like if you own so many licenses, sorry, until you get down to a certain number of licenses, not transferable. So that you are offering transferability only to people who have no licenses or one license or something that's very limiting in that regard. And again, I'll just I want to put it on the table, and I don't know where it gets weaved into this. The last time I'll mention it is I think we need to start looking at non-filtered tobacco products or banning the filter in tobacco products so that we can limit the amount of pollution that is created from these products. And then, so those are my comments. I'm sorry that they're kind of a little bit all over the place and not offering succinct direction, but I didn't really actually know what we were going to be talking about today. So other than hearing some discussion, so thanks.
Thank you. I also just want to, in essence of time, remind this board that 2 board members have to leave. And so if we could try to wrap this one up. I'm going to go to Supervisor Arroyo, but I do want to say the 5 miles for me is on the Avenue of the Giants, which is largely in my district. It is like one store every 5 miles. It really is through the avenue. And similarly, and I don't need you to respond. I'm just making a comment here. And then I'm going to go to Supervisor Arroyo, and then you can come back to you. Just similarly in that area down there, it seems to be the 5-mile increments, and people would drive from Myers Flat to Miranda. I just think it makes sense that we don't have these vehicles going back and forth between communities if we can help it. So that's just my thoughts. Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you. I think this is known and has been emphasized when we talked about this in the past, but I just want to reiterate that commercial tobacco use, and that term distinguishes from like ceremonial use of tobacco within specific cultures. But commercial, frequent, regular tobacco use is the leading cause of preventable disease, disability, and death in this country. So when I think about what we have control over is a decision-making body that makes decisions about public health. If we could make any dent at all in any meaningful dent in the leading cause of death in our that is preventable in our nation, I think that I take that responsibility very seriously, and I think it outweighs some of the other impacts in my mind. But I would suggest that the ad hoc take this feedback and come, we're not prepared with an agendized recommendation on a policy change today. This was about providing input and direction, and so to staff, but also, okay, then we can have it go just to staff to consider this input if you feel like you have enough information to move forward, or if you feel you need more clarity from this board today to be able to incorporate what we're asking for, which does sound like we have diverse perspectives on this, then that would be helpful to hear.
Thank you. Let me just share, definitely we've been taking lots of notes of just the general conversation and points made and different considerations. What I'm hearing is some potential options. So there's the, greater than, 10 miles, that sounds like there was some interest, 5 miles as another alternative to that. I also heard from Supervisor Wilson, perhaps considering a limit of for one business, how many licenses they could transfer. So that's something that I also heard. Go ahead.
I just an alternative, because I hear the more than 5 miles or less than 5 miles, or Supervisor Madrone said 10, Wilson said a little bit more. What if there's one business, one store in a town? Is there some, if that one store is selling and wants to transfer that license, is there some kind of language we could put in there? Because that would cut down on the traveled miles, the vehicle travel miles.
Yeah, so that was sort of that line of thinking was one of the options that we had explored. And the challenge that we ran into was how towns are defined, if it's like a census designated area, or there were a couple other terms that I didn't retain. And so just determining what language would be used to determine what is considered a town.
Well, so if you did a 10-mile radius, but you recognize that Myers Flat is a town and there's one store there, so then nothing else within that 10-mile radius would qualify anyways. So it wouldn't, like Weot is another 5 miles from Myers Flat. Miranda is another 5 miles from Myers Flat. Garberville is 7 miles from, Miranda. So I don't know, but the avenue is a very dangerous area to drive as well. And to cut down the travel miles and the back and forth on the avenue that's just my thoughts.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think what we would just need to do is consult with county council of like that, what would be the legal definition of a town so that we could consider that input that you're describing.
Thank you for considering that. Yeah. And I interrupted you. Do you want to finish?
Was there any other alternative that we just wanted? Those were kind of
adding the
three.
non-transferable, or the license non-transferable or may not be transferable.
Oh yeah, and I think that's feedback that we could take in terms of how we update the licenses and what's written on them, regardless of the ordinance.
So you get a
structure.
state license and a county license, correct? So the state will not say that.
Yeah, but
the county would.
We could look at.
Yep.
Right, transferability.
Subject to whatever ordinance.
Right, then that's a big motivation for the ad hoc to provide clarity. And I'm hearing some other ideas from Supervisor Wilson, and I don't know if the board supports pursuit of those ideas or how we digest that as staff or take that to. Is that direction from the board? Is that direction from one supervisor? And how do we balance that direction? And what do we come back with? What is the expectation for us?
Yeah, I think something that would be helpful is, I don't know how, procedurally you all would want to handle it, but I think actually getting the idea of like, if any of these ideas have majority support or consensus, it would at least help give an idea, at least for us as staff, to get an idea of because we can look into all of these, but if there's a difference.
Yeah, that really defeats what this agenda item is about. And because of Brown Act, we cannot talk with the ad hoc. And so why don't you read your items? We can raise our hand. We'll just do very simple. And you can see if we have a majority or not. Is that okay? County Council, here you come.
That is okay. It would be a straw vote. However, another way to do it too would be to just make a motion with regard to the direction that you would like to provide to staff, and then vote on it that way, and then that would.
It's going to be very complicated, and I don't want to make 5 motions. So I think we could just draw poll really quick, and then you would have direction. I don't even know if we need. Anyways, we'll just do that. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll just read it in the order that I said them. So a 5-mile exemption. So I'm going to read 5-mile, 10-mile, and then limited transferability. Those were like the 3 main ones that I.
Part of the problem of the I'm going to say the politics of this or the process of this that we're talking about right now is that what I'm clearly saying is that I'm not actually really wanting much changes to occur, but I'm offering suggestions if there's a majority that might want to do that to get to that place. So I guess it's a little awkward in that way. I did have one, before we do that though, I did one clarifying question from Supervisor Bushnell that there was a statement that there are 2 jurisdictions that have maybe issues around this, and are those issues around that they have around the cap in the transferability? Because is our transferability issues within their jurisdictions, and is that something that they're concerned about, and what's happening with that?
So Rio Del and Fortuna are the 2 incorporated, and yes, I've had conversations with their council and their city managers that they do not think that their council, and their council has said it, I haven't talked to all the council, but with the transferable or the cap, they're not sure that they would sign on, but I think they would be more likely to sign on if the license were transferable to a new owner, not restricting more business in their towns. So the cap, I think, would be okay if the licenses were transferable with current businesses that they have currently.
And so they would not have a TRO at all, or I'm
They
not-
don't have one.
Okay, I'm confused. Don't they to take on their own version of a TRO?
So I think there's kind of 2 pieces to this. So one, each city can choose to do their own TRL. If they, however, wanted to align with the county's TRL, that would then open an opportunity if they wanted Division of Environmental Health from the county to do the enforcement, because we already have a staff person dedicated to doing that work. And so there is an incentive for a city jurisdiction, if they wanted to have that benefit, to align with what the county's ordinance is. However, they absolutely
Can do their own.
Can do their own. And I will say that as we've been doing the nitrous oxide work with the city managers, recently this summer, Brianna and I, did connect with the city managers just to and be like, hey, these are all the different provisions. What feedback do you have? Recognizing, every city is going to, and every council member is going to have their own perspective. And there wasn't any one thing in that conversation that came up as an issue, but recognizing, of course, that council members and, all the councils are going to have their own deliberation on it. But just to share, like, we did ask the city managers, like, hey, is there anything that immediately gives you pause? And in that conversation, nothing rose. But obviously there have been other subsequent conversations as well.
And city managers advise their council, and so when I was speaking with them, they were like, I don't know if my council will go for this, and then I spoke with council members. Their issue also is adopting their own ordinance and enforcing that. They don't have the funds for that, Rio Del, Fortuna, and so they would, it would be easier to adopt the counties, and also because the nitrous ordinance can be backed by that TRL, and you guys have done the work, and so it would be easier if we were all the same, if it was all the same. It's more equitable for the stores and businesses as well.
And just one last clarification. For me, the transferability on the limit of licenses wasn't the number of licenses that could be transferred, but the number of if they are to be transferred under a cap, that you could only the person being the transferee could only own certain number of licenses, 1, 2, 3, whatever that is, that there would be a limit or a cap on that transferability. That was it. Thanks.
So I had initiated a straw poll vote, and I see that you want to add something else. Is it around that straw poll?
I just am concerned that the things mentioned were outside of my. I want to. Yeah, I guess I want to add something to the straw poll, or say that like my only. I would say most of those things I will not be in support of, but. If the item was just to cap the number of licenses that we currently have, and allow some form of additional transferability, I'm open to that. I just don't want to see the cap go up. So if that could be one of the straw poll items.
But
then
that's already on there. I think that.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I don't hear anybody on this board saying increase the cap.
Great.
I've not heard one person say that.
Okay.
Supervisor Bohn.
Well, and I guess when I walk on this dais, I ruffle people, I remember. I'm not questioning what staff did. I'm questioning, the only part is we've had a pretty much unanimous, and everybody I've talked to, this wasn't explained to them, and you're right, they should have read all the pages, they should have run that one single line where it says, yeah, you can grandfather, but you can't sell it to anybody but. I understand that, but then we go back to the Sonoma, and you brought out Sonoma because I handed it to you. I can go get more if you want from other counties, because I've done a lot of calling on this. Nobody has this issue on the transferability. So Sonoma, I think, is if you've had your license with State Board of Equalization for 9 years, that is an asset you have paid the state for. You have paid the state for. We are basically, since we have taken money from these retailers, since we have taken, and I know it's not a taking, but a lot of their businesses will be deemed basically negligible. They won't be able to sell them unless they can transfer their license. So, I mean, I'd like to see some sort of, I know we have a cap. We have an arbitrary cap. We says, hey, we're throwing a cap out there. And now this is what you're going to live with. And we haven't done this. This is probably what's going to stop the local guys from wanting to get on this, because they don't want to deal with this. They don't want to deal with these guys who thought they had a viable business for the rest of their lives, as they said, as they have a makeshift 401k. Now, with that being said, heart disease is the number one thing that kills people, then cancer, and it goes down. And then heart disease, it goes by age, smoking, obesity. There's a lot to do with this. So I'm really finding that education doesn't work, then that changes a lot of what you guys are doing, because a lot of it's education, outreach, posters, paperwork, and everything else. But education doesn't work. It's enforcement and taking these things away. So if we're going to take everything away one by one, I have a concern as we go down the line, because it's just, well, we'll just take this. This won't be hard. This won't be hard. It is hard on the small businessman. And 5 miles. Okay, we're going to do 5 miles. But 5 miles is a crow flies, 5 mile both direction, 5 mile radius. Is Humboldt Hill a town? It's got 2,400 people up there. And the nearest market would be, I guess you go to Fairway, but otherwise it's all the way down, probably get into that 5 miles. So I'm just saying, is there a consideration? I know it's not going to happen. I know there won't be any consideration. But out of respect for the gentleman that showed up and all the ones I've talked to, they're getting blindsided on this. And it's nothing to do on staff. I'm not staff. They told them a lot of things, and they've abided by a lot of things because they have the plastic up, they have the setbacks and everything else. I don't think they knew they wouldn't be able to transfer their business license. And a classic case in point is the transfer of Country Club Market and the transfer of Redwood Oil. Only 3 stations he can't transfer, and it's here. And I think those people are owed a certain amount, 38 years, Red Oil, 50-plus years. The father of convenience stores, they call them, so.
Can I ask this board, does this board have are there 3 of us that would allow for transferability to a current store in unincorporated Humboldt that already has it, not exceeding the cap? Is there 3 of us? By raised hands.
Sorry, can you tell me what the current cap is? It was 29, 28?
It's whatever the current cap is.
Yeah, 29 is the current cap, and there are currently 54 licensed
So,
retailers.
I see.
Yeah, so we're well above the cap, and we are trying to get to the cap. There are businesses closing. There are, cigarette sales aren't as prominent as they used to be. I'm just asking this board, is there, because we need to get through this, and we all have different ideas. And so I think we can agree on, we want to keep the cap, correct? Okay, we got that one, keeping the cap. Is there does someone want to see a radius, or does this board feel like transferability of any store that currently carries a tobacco license, if they sell their store, is okay? By hand raise, is there 3 of us? So no, there's 2 of us. How about by miles? Is there a thought by miles that a store could transfer their license within a certain mile radius? Is there 3 of us? Raise your hand, yes or no, please. Rex, just so I can try to get through this.
I understand what you're trying to get to, but I'm just saying,
You don't have the board, we don't have the boards for the other.
oh, I'm well aware of that, trust me.
So
Yes.
I see 3 votes for a mile radius. What that mile radius is now, we need to get down to. What was the other things?
Let's see, Supervisor Wilson's recommendation of, and forgive me, it's like, I know what you're talking about, but I'm realizing maybe
butts?
I'm not saying, no, around a cap on the number of licenses an individual business could transfer.
Is there 3 votes for limiting the amount of licenses that are consecutive to one owner? We're just straw polling.
understand that. I don't know, do you mean transferable to just the owners or transferable?
So if someone owns 1 license and someone wants to purchase the business that owns 15 licenses, it may not be transferable if there is a cap on that on the amount of licenses you can own.
Let me clarify here, because really it's about the mom and pop part of this, which is transferring to somebody who has a limited number of licenses, basically.
It's the same, Mike. So if someone out there that has 30 licenses wants to buy Tom's store that has 1, and we have a cap on that, then those folks are not going to be able to buy his 1 store, which is a mom and pop. But if
Right,
someone
but-
of a mom and pop has a 0 license or 1 or 2 licenses, wants to buy Tom's 1 store, they can.
You got it.
Thank you.
So you're saying if somebody comes in here and wants to buy one Tom's store that's been in business for 20 years, 10 years, whatever the case may be, and he owns no stores in Humboldt County, we could transfer to him?
Yes.
That's the concept, because it maintains the mom and pop
Yes.
part of
That's,
that.
that's kind of from day one. I'm not looking to sell to chains or anything else. We do have the element of the one that's selling to a large chain, but they don't own any here.
So if this board wants to have a cap on excessive licenses not being able to buy another license, please raise your hand so we can get down to that. Is there 3 of us?
I'm willing to see that workshopped. I have a lot of questions.
There's going to have to be
Yep.
clarification, but we need to whittle this down. So there's 3 of us. Next question, please. There was 5 of us, actually.
I'll have one that I request, which is transferability only if the license limits to non-filtered products.
Does anybody on this board, are there 3 votes for that?
It's about the
butts.
The waste product.
Yep, I know what it is about. Selling, so it would be selling non-filtered tobacco products. Are there 3 votes for that? No 3 votes for that. So,
Well, I'm just gonna say, it turns out that it's
work on the state, Mike.
not less,
Okay.
less healthy.
So you have 3 items that this board feels that you have support for. Does this board then want it to go back to the ad hoc to funnel out those 3 items?
Do you feel like you can get us closer to the goal that you've heard today?
I'd rather just see it come back from staff, because I
Okay.
think Rex and I are on very different wavelengths on this particular issue, and
Fair
frankly, I don't want to hear his comments the 20th and 30th and 50th time on the same stuff over and over again.
Understood.
Heard you, Rex, you've made your points very well, but frankly, that was the problem that you actually admitted to in the very first meeting, where you got in trouble of trying to push stuff, It's like, we should just speak our points of view, but not feel the need to lobby for it 20, 30 times. I get real tired of that. So no, I think it should just come back from staff, frankly.
Okay, so then Sophia,
Wow.
do you need more? So on those 3 items, how can we help you with direction?
Let me just summarize how
Thank you.
I understand them, and you all let me know if you're like, that is not what I heard. So keeping the cap the same, so that would remain the same, but that having some sort of radius exemption. We didn't get specificity on miles, but we can look, given the conversation, I feel like we can look at like 5 miles versus 10 and kind of get, look at give you some ideas of like what the difference would be. And then also looking at, again, we'll workshop how to talk about limiting the transferability based on the number of licenses owned by a business. And so we'll also work with County Council will be a really important partner. Thank you so much. But that's what I heard. Is there any clarification you will need? Okay.
Okay, say it back one more time, and then I'm going to make that into a motion.
Okay, okay. It's a good pop quiz. So keep the cap the same with a radius exemption, and we will look at different options for that, and then also coming back with a recommendation for limiting the transferability of licenses based on the number of licenses held by a business.
Kaylee, did you get that?
I did.
I'm going to make that motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Kaylee, can we get the voting tab set?
Supervisor Arroyo?
Oh, sorry, we're voice voting?
Yes.
Oh,
One didn't come up.
did you say yes? She did.
I said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Supervisor Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Chair Bushnell?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you to staff.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So our next item is going to be closed session, and we'll go to County Council.
Thank you, Chair Bushnell. It is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Sections 54954.5 and 54957 in order to consider the public employee performance evaluations for the positions of the Clerk of the Board of Supervisors and the Director of Planning and Building.
Go ahead.
It is also the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957.6 in order to review the county's position and instruct its designated labor negotiators. Finally, it is the intention of the board to meet in closed session pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.9D1 in order to discuss existing litigation in the cases of Janet Reed Rogers versus County of Humboldt, Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2501810, Yurok Indian Housing Authority versus County of Humboldt, Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2401392, and Robin Heatherstorm versus County of Humboldt et al., Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2500572.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go to public comment on closed session items, and we'll start on the Zoom.
There is none, Chair.
Closing that portion, going into the room. Any public comment in the room? Seeing none, closing that. How long do you estimate closed session?
I would say about 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Okay, so we're going to do 2 hours and 15 minutes. We'll let Eric know if it's sooner. And then also for the board, 10 minutes, please. We have lunch in there, and then come right into A, please.
Okay, we're reconvening here, and oh yeah, microphone, right. Forgot about that. Here we are. We're reconvening this afternoon after closed session. Do we have a report out?
Yes, we do. There was no reportable action taken with regard to items K1 through K3 and K5 through K6. With regard to item K4, the board voted unanimously to authorize the Humboldt County Counsel's Office to defend the County of Humboldt in the case of Janet Reed Rogers versus County of Humboldt, Humboldt County Superior Court Case Number CV 2501810.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Seeing none, We are adjourned. We are adjourned.
We're adjourning in memory. It's a reminder. It was brought up.
Okay. I think we're good. We are adjourned.